Welcome back, and thank you for joining tonight. If you're here for gentle, boring history for sleep, for slow stories that unwind the mind, or for a calm place to rest while learning something quietly fascinating, you've found the right spot. Tonight, we travel to medieval Japan. It's the age of the samurai, of honour-bound warriors and endless conflicts fought beneath grey winter skies. But we're not following the clang of swords or the poetry of battle. We're going somewhere slower, colder, and far more human. We're slipping into the icy camps of samurai soldiers during the harshest months of war to find out how they endured the long, frozen nights. What they wore, how they ate, how they tried to sleep when their armour froze stiff, and how they survived when the wind sliced through silk and straw like a blade. You can relax now. Let your breathing slow. Imagine the faint creak of old wood, the hiss of falling snow, and the quiet shuffle of men settling down on hard ground after a day of exhaustion and duty. The fire is burning low. The sound of distant horses fades, and somewhere a sentry coughs into the cold. The world of medieval Japan is about to unfold slowly around you, not as a legend, but as it really was. Muddy, disciplined, loyal, tired, and always a little too cold. Now take a deep breath, settle in, and let's step gently into that world together. You wake up to the sound of nothing. Just a thin crack of wind slicing through the gaps in your tent. The world outside is frozen white, buried beneath another night's worth of snow that fell silently while you slept, or tried to. Your body feels as though it's been folded and left out to harden. Your blanket is stiff with frost. The mat beneath you, woven from straw, crunches when you move. Every joint in your body argues with the idea of waking up. And yet you do, because the alternative is worse. Staying still too long means the cold wins. Congratulations. You've survived the night, at least for now. You're somewhere deep in the mountains of central Japan during the Sengoku period. The year doesn't matter. The cold doesn't care. Your lord's army is camped miles from the nearest village, cut off by snow and obligation. You're a samurai, or close enough to one to suffer the same. You've spent the last few weeks marching through valleys that look like they were designed specifically to test how much misery a human body can endure. You reach for your sword before you even sit up. Not because you expect an attack, but because it's habit. The blade is the first thing you touch every morning, and the last thing you check every night. Its hilt is cold enough to burn your palm. You draw it halfway just to make sure the steel hasn't rusted in the damp air. The sound of metal sliding free is sharp and satisfying, though your hand shakes a little from the cold. Your armour lies beside you in a heap. The lacquered plates that once gleamed under sunlight now look dull and wet. Straps frozen stiff. Silk cords dark with moisture. The moment you put it on, you'll feel the cold sink deeper, as if the armour itself wants to join the weather's side. But you can't go without it. Orders might come at any time, and no one wants to be caught unready. You glance around your shelter, if you can call it that. The tent is barely tall enough to sit in. Bamboo poles, thin cloth, and straw. More suggestion than structure. The edges flap and whistle in the wind. The ground is frozen solid. Somewhere near your head, your breath has formed a layer of ice on the inner wall. A fragile little sculpture of last night's suffering. You brush it and flakes fall onto your face. You close your eyes and let the moment pass. Outside, the camp begins to stir. You hear the sound of boots on ice. The dull clatter of armour. Men coughing, horses shifting restlessly. No one speaks much in the morning. Words take energy, and energy is something everyone guards like gold. The smell that drifts through the camp isn't pleasant. Smoke, sweat, and unwashed bodies mixed with the sour tang of damp straw and the faint rot of fish that's been carried too long. But after weeks on campaign, your nose has given up protesting. You reach for your cloak. It's made of wool and smells faintly of smoke and horsehair. It doesn't feel warm so much as it feels less cold than the air around it, which is the closest thing to comfort you'll find. Your hands are red and cracked. You flex your fingers slowly, wincing as the skin splits along the knuckles. The wooden bowl near your bedding still holds a scrap of rice from last night. It's frozen solid, a tiny monument to bad timing. You toss it aside and push yourself up. Standing takes effort. Your legs ache from the march, your feet wrapped in layers of straw sandals that have long since lost their shape. You stamp them on the ground, partly to get the blood moving, partly to remind yourself that you still can. Outside, a voice calls for the morning watch to report. The sound is carried thinly by the wind, distant but unmistakable. Duty doesn't freeze. When you crawl out of the tent, the light stings your eyes. The sun is pale, useless, hanging low behind clouds that look as heavy as stone. Snow crunches under your feet. The camp stretches out in uneven rows, a patchwork of tents and lean-tos. Men moving slowly through the morning ritual of survival. Some are already tending fires, coaxing weak flames from damp wood. Others are shaking frost from their armour, or feeding the horses with what little hay remains. The animals snort clouds into the air, their bodies trembling against the cold. You join them because there's nothing else to do. You find your comrades huddled around a small pit, the smoke blowing sideways. The fire isn't big enough to warm anyone, but everyone pretends it is. They sit close, hands extended, faces blank. A few mutter quiet jokes about frostbite, about whose toes will blacken first. No one laughs loudly. The humour is more about staying awake than being funny. Someone hands you a cup of warm liquid. It's not tea, not really. It's water boiled with rice scraps, thin and tasteless, but it goes down warm, and that's what matters. You drink it slowly, holding the cup with both hands, pretending that the warmth might somehow move up your arms and settle in your chest. It doesn't, but you keep drinking anyway. The officer walks by, wrapped in layers of fine silk and fur that do nothing to hide the exhaustion on his face. His breath steams in the air like everyone else's. He nods once, says nothing, and moves on. Rank doesn't stop the cold. The banners above his tent hang limp and stiff with ice. Even the clan crest looks tired. The morning continues in slow motion. You feed the fire, mend your straw sandals with frozen fingers, and rub a bit of oil into your blade, though the oil itself has thickened like syrup. Someone nearby sneezes, then keeps working. Illness is common. The healers can do little beyond boiling herbs and pretending it helps. Everyone coughs, everyone shivers. No one complains too much. Complaining is useless. Your mind drifts while your body goes through the motions. You think about home. Wooden floors instead of frozen ground, warm sake, maybe a soft futon that doesn't smell like mildew. You picture the sound of rain on a roof that doesn't leak. It's a dangerous kind of thinking. The more you remember comfort, the colder this place feels. So you stop and focus on the rhythm of breathing instead. In, out. Clouds of white vanish into the air. A young recruit nearby tries to light another fire. His hands shake too much, and he drops the spark. The older samurai beside him says nothing, just takes the flint and does it for him. The fire catches this time. Both men watch it burn like it's the most beautiful thing they've ever seen. For a moment, the camp feels alive again, tiny flickers of orange scattered across the snow. Then the wind picks up, sharp and sudden, and the world goes grey again. You pull your cloak tighter. Your face is numb. Somewhere, a horse screams. A high, panicked sound that cuts through everything. The noise stops quickly, replaced by the murmur of men calming the herd. You look down at your hands. They're trembling again. Maybe from the cold, maybe not. Your stomach growls. Breakfast, if it happens, will be another handful of rice. Maybe a strip of dried fish if supplies haven't frozen solid. Food is measured carefully. Each soldier gets just enough to stand, not enough to feel full. The quartermaster walks through camp with a wooden box, counting portions with a look that says he's long past caring about fairness. You take your share and eat it in silence, the rice sticking to your teeth, cold before it reaches your throat. Time drags. The snow reflects so much light that you can't tell if it's morning or afternoon. Everything blends together. Your breath, your steps, your thoughts. They all move at the same slow pace. Somewhere up the line, a messenger shouts orders. The voice echoes but doesn't carry meaning. You don't bother listening. Orders always mean more marching, more waiting, or both. A few men nearby start adjusting their armour, checking the cords, brushing off frost. It's almost funny how everyone still cares about appearance. Even when your lips are cracked and your feet are numb, you make sure the plates shine. Honour isn't warmth, but it's something to hold on to. You glance toward the hills. The landscape is pure white, endless. Snow covers everything, trees, stones, even the bodies of those who didn't make it through the last night. You try not to look too long at the small mounds that break the surface here and there. They blend into the scenery soon enough, forgotten under another layer of snow. You remember the stories you heard before coming here, tales of glorious battles, noble deaths, loyalty that outlives the body. The reality is quieter, less heroic. The enemy isn't always visible. Most days, it's the cold itself that tests your resolve. The sword is easy to face. The weather is not. The officer returns, speaking to a group of soldiers by the fire. His voice is steady, his tone polite, but you can see the same weariness in his eyes. The orders are simple. Hold position. Wait for supply lines to catch up. Maintain discipline. The same words you've heard a dozen times before. You nod along with everyone else, though you know the supplies might not come for days. When he leaves, someone mutters something about the gods testing patience. Another says the gods have better things to do. You don't respond. You're too tired to believe or disbelieve. The only thing that feels certain is the weight of the sword at your side and the bite of the wind on your face. The rest of the day passes without change. The snow keeps falling, the fires keep dying, and you keep moving because stopping feels too close to giving up. You help carry firewood, fetch water from a half-frozen stream, and patch a tent that tears in the wind. None of it feels like progress, but it keeps you from thinking too much. As the sun begins to fade, not that you ever really saw it, you return to your small tent. You strip off your armour piece by piece, careful not to drop anything on the frozen ground. The cold metal burns your skin. Your fingers don't feel like they belong to you anymore. You lay the armour beside you, as always, close enough to reach in the dark. You wrap yourself in the blanket again. The fabric is still damp from the morning, but it's all there is. You curl on your side, knees to chest, hands tucked close. You listen to the wind push against the tent. Outside, a guard's footsteps crunch slowly past. Somewhere far away, a temple bell rings. It sounds soft, almost kind, carried faintly through the night air. You close your eyes, but sleep doesn't come quickly. The ground is hard, your body aches, and every breath reminds you how thin the air feels here. You think about home again, then force the thought away. It doesn't help. You think about honour, loyalty, the oaths you swore before setting out. Those words meant something once. Maybe they still do. But right now, all you can feel is cold. The fire outside burns low. Someone adds more wood. The smell of smoke seeps through the cloth walls and settles in your hair. You breathe it in, slow and steady. The sound of the camp fades until all that's left is the rhythm of your heartbeat and the whisper of snow landing on the roof above. The night stretches on. You're not sure when you finally drift off, but when you do, it's not to dreams of glory or warmth. It's to the dull, quiet knowledge that morning will come too soon, and the frost will greet you like an old friend. You wake to the kind of cold that doesn't just sit on your skin, it burrows into your bones and waits there. The fire you built before sleeping has died completely, leaving behind only the faint smell of smoke and a thin layer of ash that the wind has already started to scatter. Your breath hangs heavy in the air, a slow ghost that rises and disappears before you can take the next one. Everything is still. You can hear the snow crack when you move, like breaking glass under a thick blanket. Your blanket, if you can call it that, is damp again. The straw mat beneath you feels harder than wood, and it's hard to tell where your body ends and the earth begins. You push yourself up slowly, every muscle protesting, your arms stiff from sleeping in armour the night before. You swore you'd take it off next time, but next time never comes. The cold doesn't allow luxuries like comfort or promises. The armour lies beside you, where you set it last night. Lacquered plates of iron and leather, bound with cords that have frozen solid. It's a beautiful piece of craftsmanship, in theory. The kind of armour that in warmer months might gleam beneath sunlight, that might make you look like the kind of man who's ready to die with dignity. But now, in this frozen province, it looks less like protection and more like punishment. You reach for the breastplate first. The surface is slick with frost, and when you lift it, your fingers stick briefly to the cold metal. You hiss under your breath, rubbing them together, but the pain is familiar. Everyone in the camp wears their bruises and blisters like the cost of loyalty. The silk cords that hold the plates together have stiffened overnight. You bend one, and it snaps with a small, pitiful sound. You stare at the broken end, then tie it again, clumsy with numb fingers. Getting dressed is a ritual now, a kind of suffering you repeat each day until it feels like prayer. First, the underlayers. A thin robe of hemp or linen, too light for this weather, too worn to do much good. You pull it on anyway because without it, the armour would tear your skin open before noon. Over that, another layer, silk if you're lucky, rougher cloth if you're not. The silk is supposed to help the plate slide over your body, supposed to make you move like water through battle. It doesn't. Not when it's soaked and half frozen. You tug at it until it lies flat against your chest, and you can feel the chill of it sink straight into your heart. Then comes the padding, a jacket of quilted cotton, stiff as bark. It smells like damp straw and sweat, and when you move your arms, you can hear it creak. You pull it tighter, tie it with frayed cords, and tell yourself it's warmth, even though it's not. It's just another layer between you and the air that wants to kill you. The armour goes on next. The cuirass first, two halves that meet at your sides. You fasten them together with trembling hands, feeling each knot bite into your fingers. The shoulder guards, the sewed, hang heavily, clanking as they fall into place. They used to make you feel strong once. Now they make your shoulders ache before the day's even begun. The thigh plates, the coat for your arms, the shin guards, it all adds weight. By the time you're done, you feel less like a man and more like a statue built to be miserable. The others in the camp are doing the same. Everywhere you look, men are wrestling with their armour, helping each other tie cords, stamping their feet to fight the numbness. The sound of it, metal against metal, the rustle of cloth, the grunts and curses, fills the air like a morning hymn. It's a symphony of survival. No one's really talking. Words are wasted in this weather. You just nod at each other, sharing that silent understanding that none of this gets easier. You grab your helmet last. The inside smells of sweat and rust, the padding damp from yesterday's snow. You turn it over, shake out a few frozen flakes, and slide it on. It settles heavy on your head, pressing down on your ears until the world sounds distant, muffled. Your vision narrows through the gap of the faceplate. Everything feels smaller, tighter, harder to breathe in. But at least now you're ready. Ready for what? You're never sure. You tighten the sash around your waist where your sword sits. The scabbard knocks lightly against your thigh as you move. The blade itself feels heavier in winter. The cold has a way of making even steel seem slower, duller. You remember the first time you were told to care for it, how your teacher said the sword was your soul. You glance at it now and wonder what kind of soul freezes so easily. Outside your tent, the snow has drifted halfway up the sides. You kick through it and step out into the camp. The air hits you like a slap. It's colder than yesterday. The wind cuts through every seam, finds its way into every gap in your armour. You can feel it creeping up your neck and down your sleeves, as if the weather itself is testing the workmanship. The sky is the colour of ash. The mountains loom in the distance, silent and unkind. Men move slowly through the camp, like ghosts wrapped in metal. The banners barely move. Fires burn weakly, their smoke curling straight up before being carried away. A few horses stand tied near the edge, their breath coming in heavy bursts, eyes half closed. One of them stamps at the snow and snorts, impatient. You envy its warmth, its simplicity. The officers make their rounds again. Orders are given, quiet but firm. Patrols must continue, the perimeter must be held. It doesn't matter that the enemy hasn't been seen in days. The cold itself is enemy enough, and if you don't keep moving, it will claim you without a fight. You adjust your armour one more time and follow the others toward the ridge. Walking in armour through snow feels like punishment dreamed up by someone who hated the concept of mercy. Each step sinks deep, each movement resisted by weight and wind. The iron plates clank with every breath, rubbing against each other until your shoulders burn, the cords cut into your sides, the silk beneath, meant to protect your skin, is soaked through within minutes. The dampness freezes again, almost immediately. It's not protection. It's a slow, freezing hug that lasts all day. You try not to think about it. You focus on the rhythm of marching, the sound of boots crunching, the creak of armour settling. You look at the men beside you, their faces hidden behind helmets, their eyes dull from fatigue. You all look the same now. Honour stripped of individuality, discipline masquerading as purpose. The wind picks up. Snow swirls in your face, sticks to your lashes. You tilt your head down just enough to see where you're stepping. Somewhere behind you, someone slips. The sound of metal hitting the ground is loud, final. A few men stop to help, and you keep moving. Not because you don't care, but because stopping means freezing. You tell yourself they'll catch up. Maybe they will. The patrol lasts hours, though it feels like a lifetime. You pass through the woods, branches heavy with snow, the air silent except for the crunch of your steps. Once in a while, you hear something distant, a crack of ice, a low groan of wood. But it's just the land shifting, reminding you that it's alive, even if you barely feel that way. By the time you return to camp, the light is fading again. The fires burn a little brighter now, and the smell of something boiling drifts through the air. Maybe rice, maybe fish, maybe whatever they could scrape together. You loosen your armour, not because it helps much, but because it feels good to imagine relief. Your shoulders throb. Your legs feel like they've turned to wood. And you sit by the fire with a few others, holding your hands out to the heat. The metal of your gauntlets warms quickly, almost too quickly. You pull them off and let your bare hands hover over the flame. The skin is red, cracked, flaking. You watch a bead of melted snow run down your wrist and vanish into your sleeve. The warmth feels foreign, dangerous, like something borrowed that will be taken back soon. Someone beside you is mending his armour with a strip of leather. The lacquer on his plates is chipped, the cords frayed. He works in silence, his breath slow and steady. You wonder if he's thinking about home too, or maybe he's thinking about how many more nights he can stand this. It's hard to tell. Everyone's face looks the same in this light, tired, pale, empty. The officer passes again, his armour cleaner, his cloak thicker, but even he looks worn down. The cold doesn't care about rank or heritage. It strips everyone down to the same thing, creatures trying to stay alive until morning. Someone starts humming quietly. It's an old song, one you remember from before the campaign, from the days when you still thought winter was beautiful. The tune drifts through the air, simple and slow. A few men join in softly, almost without realising it. The sound doesn't make you warmer, but it does something else. It reminds you that you're not alone. When the song fades, silence returns, and you start to remove your armour piece by piece. The relief is instant but short-lived. The air bites at every patch of skin it can find. You hang the armour near the fire, hoping it will dry before tomorrow. The lacquer cracks faintly from the heat. You ignore it. There's no replacing it out here. You lay your sword beside you, wrap your cloak tighter, and lean closer to the fire. The snow outside keeps falling, a steady rhythm that fills the night with its quiet persistence. The wind shifts, carrying the faint smell of pine and smoke. You close your eyes for a moment, just to rest them, and listen to the armour creak as it cools. You think again about how much these layers weigh, how each piece meant to protect you also traps you. Silk, cotton, iron, all promises of safety that instead just make you colder, heavier, slower. You think about the stories told to new recruits, about how armour was an extension of the soul. How a warrior's discipline could overcome any hardship. Maybe that's true for the men who wrote those stories, sitting by warm fires far from the snow. Out here, armour isn't a symbol. It's a burden you wear because the alternative is death. The fire pops. A spark lands on your sleeve, leaving a small black mark. You brush it away and watch the ember fade. Around you, men shift, sigh, settle. Some remove their helmets and place them carefully beside their beds of straw, as if afraid the armour might vanish in the night. Others sleep sitting up, swords across their laps, because trust freezes faster than water. You sit there a while longer, feeling the weight of the plates beside you, hearing the faint clatter as the wind moves them. You wonder if there's any warmth left in the world beyond this camp. You wonder how much longer the silk, the leather, and the iron will keep pretending to save you. The snow keeps falling. The fires burn lower. Someone coughs. Someone mutters in their sleep. And you, like everyone else, sit perfectly still, wrapped in silk, trapped in ice, waiting for another dawn that promises nothing except more of the same. You tell yourself you'll sleep tonight. You always tell yourself that. After a day spent marching, carrying supplies, and pretending that your armour doesn't feel like a second skeleton, you think your body will simply collapse into rest. But it never happens that way. Sleep, out here, is something you negotiate with, not something you earn. The straw mat you lie on crunches beneath you, brittle from cold and soaked through in places where the snow melted and froze again. When you shift, it creaks. You can feel every ridge of the frozen ground underneath, each one pressing its mark into your back. The tent cloth above you sags under the weight of snow, the edges stiff with frost. A single candle burns near your feet, its flame trembling each time the wind presses through a seam. You pull your cloak tighter. The wool is heavy, damp, and smells like smoke and mildew. The warmth you felt by the fire is already gone. Your body is cooling faster than you can stop it. You curl into yourself, knees drawn up, chin tucked down, like a man trying to occupy as little space in the world as possible. The air is thin. Your breath fogs up the inside of the tent, then turns to frost along the seams. You close your eyes and listen. The camp never truly sleeps. Somewhere a horse snorts. Metal clinks softly as a soldier shifts in his armour. Someone coughs until it sounds like a knife scraping wood. The sentries outside stamp their feet and mutter to stay awake. The wind whistles through the valley, slipping between tents, carrying with it a thin layer of snow that finds every opening. It collects in the corners, dusting your blankets, melting against your face. You turn over and adjust the straw mat again. The straw used to feel soft when it was dry. Back home, in warmer seasons, it might have been a kind of comfort, a familiar creak under your body. Here, it's nothing but a frozen layer between you and the earth's indifference. You try to remember the last time you slept on a futon, or the way tatami smelled in summer when the air was warm and humid. The memory is vague, too far away to feel real. You keep your sword beside you, as always. The scabbard rests against your leg. The hilt is cold, slick with condensation. You've slept with it for so many nights now that your hand sometimes finds it in your sleep, gripping it without thought, fingers tightening around the wrapping as if the blade itself were a kind of reassurance. It isn't comfort, it's habit. You can't trust comfort out here. Someone outside the tent mutters something about the fire dying again. Footsteps crunch past. The flap lifts for a moment, letting in a gust of icy air that steals your breath. You see a pale outline of snow swirling in the darkness beyond. Then the flap drops, and you're alone again, with your shallow breaths and the smell of smoke and wet fabric. You roll onto your back and stare at the tent ceiling. A small icicle hangs near the centre, thin as a finger. You watch it drip every few seconds. The drops land near your shoulder, soaking into the blanket. You could move, but you don't. You just listen to it, one drop at a time, counting the distance between them. It's something to do. The sound becomes its own kind of rhythm, almost like a heartbeat for the tent itself. You think about how men talk of discipline and strength, of how the samurai spirit endures any hardship. They never mention this part, the waiting, the slow sinking into discomfort that never ends. The body adapts to pain quicker than the mind does. The cold hurts less now than it used to. It's not that it's any warmer. You've just accepted that warmth is no longer part of your world. A voice drifts through the wind from another tent. Someone's praying quietly, their words muffled. You catch fragments, Buddhist sutras perhaps, or something older. Out here prayers are currency. They don't buy relief, but they fill the silence, make it feel less endless. You whisper a few lines yourself without thinking, more out of reflex than faith. The words fog the air and vanish. You wonder if the gods can hear anything through this much snow. Your stomach growls. You ate hours ago, if that's what you can call it. A handful of cold rice and a scrap of salted fish that tasted more like smoke than food. Hunger doesn't keep you awake anymore. It just sits quietly, a background ache like everything else. You've learned to live with it the same way you'd live with the cold. You don't fight it. You just let it exist. The man in the next tent snores. It's a rough, uneven sound that rises and stops suddenly, like he's choking on his dreams. You envy him a little. At least he's sleeping. You lie still, listening to the rise and fall of the noise. The longer it goes, the less it sounds human. It blends with the wind, with the faint creak of ice forming on the ropes outside. The world has a way of swallowing every sound and making it part of itself. You think about home again, though you try not to. You think of warmer nights, of quiet rooms and soft mats, of the faint smell of tea leaves and burning wood. You remember lying down without armour, without fear, without the sound of men dying quietly in the dark somewhere nearby. You wonder how long it's been since you truly rested. The kind of sleep that comes with safety, with trust. The kind you forget exists until it's gone. You shift again. The straw scratches your neck. Your fingers are too cold to fix it, so you just let it. You pull the blanket over your head, breathing in your own warmth. The air turns stale quickly. You lift the edge to let in a bit of fresh air, then drop it again. You drift in that half state between waking and sleep, where thoughts come slow and strange. You think about snow piling on roofs back home, how it looked soft even when it was heavy. Out here, snow doesn't look soft. It looks like a burial. Time doesn't move the way it should in the dark. You're not sure if an hour passes or just a few minutes. The candle beside you burns low, sputtering in its dish. You watch the wax run down and harden on the straw. It makes a tiny sound as it cools, a faint crackle that somehow feels louder than it should. Outside, the wind shifts direction. You can tell because the tent starts moving differently, the walls pressing in then pulling back. Snow filters through a seam above your head, sprinkling across your blanket. You wipe it away lazily. The flakes melt against your skin, leaving small, sharp trails of water. You could fix the seam, you could tie it tighter, but that means getting up, and you're too tired for that kind of victory. A thought comes to you. Strange. Uninvited. You wonder how many men have died in their sleep out here. Not from battle, but from the cold itself. No sound, no struggle, just the slow slipping away as the body gives up pretending. It doesn't seem like a bad way to go, not compared to what waits in daylight. You imagine being found in the morning, still in your armour, sword by your side, snow already covering you. It would look peaceful, almost honourable, as if the land itself claimed you. The thought lingers longer than it should. You shake it off and sit up. The movement hurts. Your knees crack. The blanket falls away, and the cold rushes back in like punishment for daring to stop moving. You rub your arms, trying to force warmth into them. It doesn't work. You look around the small tent, the gear stacked in the corner, the small dish with frozen rice, the armour still drying near the entrance. It all feels temporary, like a life borrowed from someone else. You crawl toward the flap and lift it slightly. The night outside is blinding white. The snow reflects the moonlight, turning the world into a pale, silent wasteland. You can see the outlines of other tents, the faint glow of fires flickering weakly against the wind. The men on watch stand like statues, their armour glinting faintly. One shifts his stance, rubbing his hands together, then looks toward the ridge where the mountains vanish into cloud. You let the flap fall again and lie back down. The air inside feels warmer now, just from the movement. You stretch out slowly, every muscle stiff. The straw mat shifts beneath you. You press your hand flat against it, feeling the rough texture, the frozen edges. This is what you have instead of comfort. A mat of straw, a blanket that holds more moisture and heat, and a promise that if you survive long enough, maybe you'll sleep better someday. You close your eyes again. The wind hums through the camp like a long breath. The sound of the river somewhere below fades in and out, muffled by snow. You focus on your breathing, matching it to the rhythm of the wind. For a few seconds, it feels like you're floating between worlds, half here, half somewhere else. You start to drift. The images that come aren't dreams, not really. They're flashes. Your home, the temple near the village, a cup of tea steaming in your hands. The warmth of someone's voice saying your name. You reach for it, but the image dissolves, replaced by the sound of the wind again, colder, closer. The candle dies completely. The last bit of light flickers once, twice, and goes out. Darkness takes the tent. You can still see a faint greyness through the cloth, the moon pressing against the snow outside. You pull the blanket up to your chin and lie still. Your body feels heavier than ever. The armour near your feet clinks softly as it settles. Your sword shifts slightly against your leg. You take one last breath, deep and slow, and try to convince yourself that the cold will be kinder in sleep. The snow keeps falling, steady as ever. Outside, the camp murmurs faintly, the living moving just enough to prove they're still here. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks, sharp and brief. Then silence again. Just you, your straw mat, and the quiet certainty that morning will come whether you rest or not. The first sound you hear is wood snapping. It's faint, like a whisper, followed by the soft crackle of fire. For a few seconds, you don't move. You just lie there under the blanket, staring at the dim orange light flickering through the seams of the tent, trying to decide if it's worth crawling out into the cold. Your body already knows the answer. It aches in every place that bends, and the air stings your face where it's exposed. But the warmth out there calls to you, like a small, fragile promise. You give in and sit up. The fire outside is pathetic. 3 sticks arranged around a pile of coals that should have died hours ago. Someone must have kept feeding it through the night, little by little, hoping to make it last. The wood is damp, stolen from trees still heavy with snow. It smokes more than it burns. Every puff of wind scatters a handful of glowing sparks, sending them twisting into the air before the snow eats them. You crouch close, holding out your hands. The heat feels sharp at first, biting rather than soothing. The skin on your fingers cracks when it falls, tiny lines of pain running down to your knuckles. You turn your palms toward the flames, then your wrists, then your face, shifting slowly like a man trying to remember what warmth feels like. The fire doesn't answer back. It just flickers, sputtering as another log hisses and pops under the weight of its own moisture. The others gather too, drawn like insects. They shuffle closer, their armour clinking softly, eyes fixed on the tiny flame as though it's the only thing worth believing in. No one speaks. Words are too expensive this early. You can hear the hiss of melting snow, the faint groan of trees moving in the wind, the soft rhythm of horses stamping their feet somewhere in the distance. A man across the fire pokes the embers with a stick. The log shifts and collapses inward, sending a brief flare of light across the camp. For a moment, faces appear, lined, cracked, half hidden behind helmets or scarves. Then the light fades again, leaving shadows. One man yawns, another rubs his hands together, and someone mutters that the wood's too wet to last. No one disagrees. You all know it. Keeping a fire alive in this weather feels like defying nature itself. Every stick of wood you burn is stolen from the forest, from trees that are just as frozen as you are. Gathering it is a battle. You trudge through snow up to your knees, hacking at branches with dull blades, hauling them back by rope or sheer stubbornness. By the time you return, your fingers are numb, your breath ragged, and the fire you meant to feed has already begun to die. Sometimes, when supplies run thin, you burn whatever you can find. Old straw mats, broken arrows, even scraps of armour cords. Anything that will catch for a few minutes. The smell is awful, the smoke thick enough to make your eyes sting, but it's better than nothing. You've seen men argue over firewood the way others fight over gold. You've seen men sneak into another squad's fire circle in the night, hands out, faces desperate, only to be kicked away. You remember the first days of the campaign, when the fire was something you took for granted, when the wood was dry, and men laughed as they cooked their rice over open flames, steam rising into the cold. Those days feel distant now, like they happened in someone else's story. The laughter faded somewhere between the first snowfall and the first night a man froze before dawn. You pull a small log from the pile and toss it in. The flames climb briefly, then settle back down. You hold your hands closer. The heat feels weaker already. Fires in winter are like promises. They always fade too soon. Someone passes you a small clay pot. You look inside and find water, or something that used to be water. Thin broth with bits of rice floating in it. It's lukewarm, tasting faintly of ash and salt. You sip slowly anyway, feeling it slide down your throat. For a moment, it almost feels good. And then it's gone, and you're cold again. Across the camp, another group struggles with their fire. The wind keeps snuffing it out, scattering ashes across the snow. One man curses loudly, stomping at the ground. Another laughs, a short, bitter sound. You can see the faint glow of embers, the colour of dying coals. You know the look. You've seen it too many times. It's the same look a man gets when he realises that no matter how much he fights, the cold will always win eventually. The officers tell you to conserve fuel, to keep fires small, to ration wood. They talk about discipline, about endurance, about the way true warriors can master their bodies and conquer hardship. Easy words to say when you're standing next to a brazier in a thick silk robe. Out here, next to this flickering scrap of warmth, all the discipline in the world won't keep your blood from freezing if the fire goes out. The flames dance for a while longer, then shrink again. You reach for another log, smaller this time, and set it gently on top. The smoke shifts, blowing straight into your face. You cough, wave it away, and blink through watering eyes. The fire seems to mock you, alive just enough to keep you watching, but never strong enough to save you. Behind you, the sky begins to pale. Morning is coming, though it looks the same as every other morning. Grey, flat, indifferent. The snow glows faintly in the half-light, unbroken except for the footprints and paths you and your comrades carved into it. The air is still heavy with the smell of smoke and damp wood. You can see your breath in front of you, each exhale rising like a thin ribbon. Someone nearby tries to warm their hands over a smaller fire. The wood hisses, pops, then goes silent. He stares at it for a long time, as if willing it to relight through sheer concentration. Then he sighs and walks away, leaving the thin trail of smoke curling behind him. You watch it fade into the air, the last trace of heat disappearing without ceremony. The fire at your feet is shrinking again. You poke at it, half-hearted, watching as the red glow dims under a layer of grey ash. You can feel the heat fade from your hands. You blow on it, then feed it one last piece of wood, knowing it won't be enough. The flames flare weakly, casting long shadows across the snow, and for a moment you can see the shapes of the men around you. Silent, stooped, their faces pale and hollow. The light makes everyone look older. You wonder if fire ever feels tired. If it knows that it's fighting a losing battle every time it's born in this kind of cold. You imagine it gasping for breath, devouring whatever scraps you offer before collapsing again. Maybe that's what you are too, you think. A body burning itself just enough to keep going. A voice breaks through your thoughts. Someone shouting orders from the far side of camp. Time to move again. There's always another task, another march, another excuse to stay awake. You stand, your knees stiff, and kick snow over the embers. The fire hisses once, then dies completely. Smoke curls upward, then disappears into the white sky. You pull your cloak around your shoulders and turn away. The cold hits you instantly, seeping through every layer of clothing. The brief illusion of warmth vanishes, leaving behind only the memory of it. You start walking, boots crunching against the snow, the smell of burnt wood clinging to your hair and armour. As you pass through the camp, you see other fires dying too. Little circles of blackened snow, trails of smoke drifting like ghosts. Men stamp them out, pack their gear, tighten their belts. The cold doesn't wait for anyone. Neither does war. The fires that burned last night, the ones that kept you alive for a few hours, are already gone, reduced to ash and memory. You keep moving, the wind picks up again, lifting fine powder from the ground and stinging your eyes. You pull your scarf higher, breathe through the fabric, and the warmth from the fire feels like something that happened years ago. Ahead, the officer stands by his horse, issuing commands. His breath fogs the air as he speaks. His armour gleams faintly under a layer of frost. He looks at you as you pass, nods once, and says something about honour, perseverance, loyalty. All those words that sound heavy, but don't make you any warmer. You nod back, because that's what's expected, and keep walking. The snow crunches underfoot. The sound replaces everything else. No birds, no insects, no laughter, no life. Just snow and steel and breathing. You walk until the camp disappears behind you, replaced by a landscape of endless white. You stop for a moment, turn around, and glance back. The smoke from the dead fires still hangs in the air, curling like faint threads against the sky. It looks like incense rising from 1,000 tiny altars. You wonder if that's what you'll leave behind one day. A wisp of smoke, the last sign that you were ever warm. You take another step, and another. The cold presses in, heavy and relentless. Your body remembers the fire, but your skin already forgets. The ache returns to your fingers, to your toes, to your face. You keep walking anyway, because stopping means freezing. Somewhere behind you, someone manages to relight one of the campfires. You see it from a distance, a small orange dot glowing weakly against the grey horizon. It flickers for a moment, brave and fragile, before the wind moves in again and wipes it away. You look at the empty spot where it was, then turn forward and keep going. The world feels endless. The snow stretches on without shape or sound. You think about the fire again, about the way its warmth clung to your skin, how it faded no matter how much wood you fed it. You realise that this is what life feels like out here. Brief sparks against the cold, flaring and dying in a rhythm that never changes. You walk faster. The blood in your hands begins to move again. The ache sharpens, reminding you that you're still here. The cold hasn't won yet. Not today. But the memory of the fire stays with you, faint as the smoke on your clothes, and you know you'll spend the rest of the day chasing something that never lasts long enough to reach. The wind shifts again. Snow swirls around your feet. You lower your head, tighten your cloak, and move on. The smell of ash fades behind you. The warmth is gone. All that's left is the promise of another fire, somewhere down the road, waiting to burn for a little while before dying like all the others. And as you walk, you find yourself wondering, not when the next fire will come, but whether you'll still be there when it does. You don't remember the last time a meal felt like a reward. Out here, eating is something between maintenance and survival. A small routine that reminds you that the body still needs what the cold keeps taking. Food isn't comfort. It's just one more thing to get through before the next task. The day starts before sunrise again. The snow outside your tent is hard as stone, and your stomach aches before your eyes even open. You know it's almost time for the morning ration, because you can hear the wooden ladles clanking in the distance. The sound echoes through camp, dull and uneven, like someone tapping on frozen metal. Men begin to move. You can hear the shuffle of boots, the quiet grunts of bodies that slept too cold and too little. When you step out, the air hits you like punishment. You wrap your cloak tighter, pull your scarf higher, and follow the others toward the fire pits where the cooks work. The fires are barely alive, a few small circles of flame in a landscape that doesn't want them. The cooks move slowly, their hands red and swollen, faces half covered in cloth. Their breath mingles with the smoke rising from the pots, turning everything into a grey blur of steam and cold air. You take your place in line. There's no talking. Everyone just stares at the pot, watching the steam curl upwards, hoping that what's inside is thicker than water today. The smell is faint but familiar. Rice boiled with whatever could be found or spared. Sometimes dried fish. Sometimes vegetables that taste more like dirt than food. Sometimes nothing at all. You've learned not to expect flavour. Flavour doesn't survive out here. When it's your turn, the cook dips the ladle into the pot and pours the contents into your bowl. It splashes a little, steaming against the cold. You nod your thanks and step aside. The bowl burns your fingers at first, but you don't let go. That heat is the only real pleasure you'll have for the next few minutes. You squat near the fire and take a cautious sip. The rice is half cooked, the broth thin, the fish, if there is any, broken into flakes that taste faintly of smoke and salt. It's not enough to fill you. It never is. But it's warm. For now, that's enough. Around you, the others eat in silence. A few speak quietly about the next march, about the scouts who never came back, about home. Their voices are low, flat, without energy. No one complains. Complaining wastes air. The sound of slurping and scraping fills the air instead. A steady rhythm that feels older than war itself. You finish the bowl quickly, scraping the bottom for every grain. You lick the edge where the steam has cooled, then set it down beside you. You stare at the last bits clinging to the sides, considering whether to pour snow in and let it melt just to make the meal last longer. You don't. You've done that before. It doesn't help. It only makes you colder. The cook calls out that the rice is gone. A few men at the back of the line curse quietly, their breath white in the air. They'll have to wait until the next pot boils, which could take hours. You're lucky this time. You got your share before the pot emptied. You look down at your hands, still wrapped around the warm bowl, and hold them there, even after it's empty. The warmth fades slowly, but you savour it. You close your eyes and pretend, just for a moment, that you're home again, sitting by a real fire, eating food that didn't come from a ration bag or a barrel that's been frozen for weeks. The fantasy doesn't last long. The wind shifts, carrying with it the sharp smell of fish gone bad. Somewhere nearby, someone's trying to thaw out the last of the provisions. You glance over and see a man squatting beside a flat rock, chipping at a frozen block of fish with a knife. It looks like he's carving stone. The pieces that break off are grey and lifeless, but he gathers them carefully, like their treasure. He drops them into a pot of boiling water, and the smell that rises makes your stomach tighten again. You're not hungry anymore, not really, but your body still reacts. The officers eat elsewhere, near the supply tent where the better food is kept. You've seen it. Rice that's not cracked or discoloured. Fish that still smells faintly of the sea instead of rot. Sometimes even pickled vegetables. You don't resent them. Rank has its price and it's paid in other ways. Still, when the wind shifts and you catch the faint scent of real miso, it hits you harder than the cold ever could. Someone near the fire jokes about catching a rabbit. Everyone looks up, half amused, half hopeful. He's lying, of course. There hasn't been a living thing in sight for days except crows. Even the dogs that followed the camp have disappeared, smart enough to seek warmth elsewhere. Still, the idea of fresh meat makes everyone quiet. For a few seconds, you all imagine it. The smell of roasting flesh, the sound of fat sizzling, the warmth of fire that means more than survival. Then the image fades, and you're back to grey rice and frozen fish. By midday, the snow begins again. The flakes fall slow and heavy, coating everything in another layer of silence. The fires hiss and shrink. You pull your cloak over your head and keep eating the last scraps from your bowl. The rice is cold now, sticky and stiff, but you force it down. You can't waste it. You can't waste anything. Every grain means another step you can take before your legs give out. Someone shouts for more water. The stream at the edge of camp has frozen solid again. 2 men grab axes and head out to break it. You've done that job before. You know how the ice fights back, how it splinters in jagged shards that cut your hands, how the water beneath it feels like knives when you touch it. They'll fill buckets, carry them back, and pour them into the pots to make more broth that tastes like melted snow and ash. It's never enough, but it keeps the army moving. You glance at your reflection in the liquid left at the bottom of your bowl. The face looking back doesn't feel like yours anymore. The skin is rough and red, the lips cracked, the eyes sunken. You look older, smaller somehow. The cold does that. It grinds the edges off people until everyone starts to look the same. A messenger rides into camp near dusk. The news isn't good. Supplies are delayed again. The next convoy won't arrive for at least a week. A few men groan, others just stare. You know what it means. Thinner rations, smaller fires, longer nights. The officers nod grimly, their breath curling in the air, and walk away to discuss it in private. The camp grows quiet. You pick up your bowl and walk toward the stream, following the line of others doing the same. The path is slippery, the snow uneven. The stream is more ice than water now, a narrow line cutting through white. You kneel and scoop a handful of slush into your bowl, watching it melt slowly against the heat from your hands. The water turns cloudy with bits of dirt and ash. You drink it anyway. It tastes like the earth itself. Cold, gritty, alive in the worst way. Back at your tent, you set the bowl down and sit beside your armour. The metal is cold, unwelcoming, but you rest your back against it anyway. You can still taste the rice in your mouth, dry and bitter. You pick at a flake stuck to your teeth and swallow it just to make sure nothing goes to waste. You try not to think about hunger. Hunger has its own voice. Once you listen, it won't stop talking. Night comes quickly. The fires across camp burn low again, small orange dots in the sea of white. You hear someone trying to sing quietly, an old folk tune about home and spring and fields full of green. The voice cracks halfway through, but no one stops him. The sound drifts over the camp, blending with the hiss of the wind. You think of rice fields then, flat, open, bright under summer sun. You remember the smell of water and soil, the way the stalks moved in the wind like waves. For a moment, it's almost real. Then the wind shifts again, colder this time, and the smell of smoke and frozen fish drags you back. You take a deep breath and look around. The men closest to you are already lying down, wrapped in blankets, trying to sleep before the cold gets worse. Their bowls are stacked beside them, some still with frozen bits inside. You pull your cloak tighter, reach for your sword, and lie back on the straw mat. The ground is hard, but you've stopped noticing that. You stare at the tent wall and watch your breath form faint clouds. Your stomach growls again, quieter this time, almost shy. You press your hand against it, as if that will help. The ache blends into everything else. The cold, the fatigue, the constant buzz of discomfort. You think about the next meal. Maybe it will be better. Maybe someone will find a cache of supplies. Or maybe the convoy will arrive early. You know it won't. But it's something to think about while you wait for sleep. The last fire outside flickers weakly, its light leaking through the seams of your tent. You watch it dance on the fabric, fading a little more each time the wind breathes. You think of rice, of fish, of warmth that never lasts. You close your eyes, still tasting ash on your tongue, and listen to your stomach argue quietly with the silence. You tell yourself you'll eat again tomorrow. You always do. You tell yourself it will be enough, and maybe it will be for one more day. The cold doesn't care who you serve. Out here, beneath the same grey sky and endless snow, there's no real difference between the man who commands and the one who obeys. Everyone breathes the same frozen air, eats the same grey rice, and dreams the same dream of warmth that never comes. The titles, the banners, the rank, they still exist, but they don't mean as much when frost clings to every layer of cloth and iron. The wind doesn't bow to anyone. You wake again before dawn, if you ever slept at all. The air feels heavier today, thick with ice. Your blanket is stiff, your mat a slab of frozen straw. You can't feel your fingers. You wiggle them under the fabric until the pins and needles return, sharp enough to make you wince. The camp is silent except for the occasional cough or the distant crack of wood in a dying fire. You push yourself up slowly, the movement stiff and unwilling. The tent cloth above you shifts slightly, snow sliding down its side with a soft sigh. You sit there for a moment, staring at your armour piled beside you. It's rhymed with frost again, like everything else. The lacquered plates look almost beautiful in the half-light, black and red under a thin skin of white. You touch the hilt of your sword, not out of reverence but habit. It's still there, still cold, still heavier than you remember. When you step outside, the world greets you with silence. Snow covers everything, smoothing out the edges of tents, erasing the paths you carved yesterday. The fires have burned down to embers, their smoke curling weakly into the air. Men move slowly between them, bundled in layers that make everyone look the same, shapes of cloth and armour, colourless in the dim light. You pull your cloak tighter and head toward the centre of camp. That's where the officers stay, where the banners still stand upright even when nothing else does. The silk crests are stiff with ice, their colours muted by frost. A few servants huddle beneath them, stirring pots over small fires, tending to armour, carrying water in buckets that freeze before they reach the tents. You pass one of them, a boy, maybe 15, maybe younger. His hands raw and red, his eyes half closed with exhaustion. He glances up, nods once, and goes back to scraping soot from a pot that will never be clean again. The officers' tents are larger, reinforced with thicker cloth, their floors layered with extra straw. You know this because you've been inside once. It's not luxury, but it's better than what you have. They sleep sitting up, wrapped in silk blankets, their swords laid neatly beside them. Their fires burn longer, their food comes from the better stores. But even there, the air feels the same, dry, sharp, and merciless. You've seen frost form on their armour just like yours, seen their breath rise in clouds just as yours does. The cold makes equals of everyone, even if the world pretends otherwise. A servant passes by, carrying a tray of rice and salted fish toward one of the higher officers' tents. The steam rises from it in thin, fragile wisps. You catch the smell for only a second, enough to remind you that food can have flavour. Your stomach tightens reflexively. The servant stumbles slightly, recovers, and disappears behind the heavy flap. You turn away before the envy can settle in. Further down the camp, the rank and file are already gathered around their fires, if they still have any. The soldiers hunch close together, faces hidden behind scarves, hands extended toward the faint warmth. You can see the shapes of their breath mixing with the smoke, a blur of grey against grey. They look like ghosts haunting their own lives. Someone mutters a joke about the Lord's fire being hot enough to melt the snow all the way to Kyoto. A few men laugh quietly, not because it's funny, but because laughing makes it feel like they still can. The sound fades quickly, swallowed by the wind. You know the truth behind it anyway. The Lord's fire isn't much warmer than yours. It just burns a little longer. You remember the last time you saw him, the daimyo himself. His armour was immaculate, his face calm, expressionless like carved wood. He rode through camp on horseback, the snow crunching beneath the animal's hooves. Everyone knelt as he passed, heads bowed, eyes down. You did too. That's what loyalty demands. But you noticed his hands, gloved in fine leather, trembling slightly as he held the reins. You noticed how his breath came fast and heavy, how his voice cracked when he gave orders. The cold spares no one, not even those who speak for the gods of war. A servant near one of the fires drops a bucket. The sound is sharp, breaking the monotony for a moment. Water spills across the ground, freezing almost instantly. He curses softly and bends to scrape at it with bare hands. Another man nearby helps him, using a stick to chip the ice loose. You watch them for a while, wondering how long they'll last before their fingers stop obeying. Hierarchy still exists in camp, of course. It always does. Orders still flow downwards, and silence still flows up. But the cold blurs the lines. You've seen officers carrying water because their servants collapsed. You've seen soldiers sharing blankets with men who once threatened to beat them for speaking out of turn. Pride doesn't last long when frost settles in your bones. You move closer to one of the fires, joining a group of soldiers who are warming their hands over it. They make room without speaking. The fire is small, barely enough for 3, but 6 of you huddle around it anyway. The heat is thin, uneven, but it's something. You hold your palms near the flame, feeling the sting as the blood returns. One of the men beside you nods toward the officers' tents and says, "They're cold too. They just hide it better." You nod. He's right. Another man adds a log to the fire. It hisses and pops, sending a spark into the air. You all watch it rise and vanish. Someone says the snow is supposed to stop tomorrow. No one answers. You've all heard that before. The weather doesn't take orders either. The conversation drifts to stories, small things, fragments of normal life that don't belong here. One man talks about his wife back home, how she used to keep the house so warm that he'd sleep with the windows open even in winter. Another says he can't remember the sound of his children's voices anymore. You listen quietly, not because you have anything to add, but because the sound of talking makes the cold feel less like a living thing. A sudden gust of wind scatters the fire's smoke into your faces. You all turn away, coughing. The man across from you laughs weakly and says, "The fire hates us as much as the snow does." No one disagrees. After a while, the officer in charge of your unit appears. He's wrapped in a heavy fur cloak, the kind that marks him as higher rank, but his face is pale and drawn. He gives the usual orders: check the perimeter, reinforce the tents, keep the fires burning if possible. His voice is steady, but his hands shake as he speaks. You wonder if he even notices. You wonder if he slept last night. Probably not. The higher the rank, the more weight the cold seems to carry. When he leaves, one of the men mutters that even the lords must be wondering why they ever started this campaign. You think about that for a while. Maybe it's true. Maybe even the commanders lie awake at night, staring at the tent walls, wondering how honour and frostbite ended up in the same sentence. The sun rises, though you wouldn't know it from looking. The sky lightens slightly, a dull grey turning into a paler grey. The snow reflects the light, blinding you if you stare too long. The officers ride out to inspect the outer camps, their horses moving cautiously through the drifts. Servants follow on foot, carrying gear, supplies, messages. You watch them struggle, slipping on the ice, faces twisted with effort. The horses snort and stamp, their breath steaming like small fires in the cold air. You join a work detail assigned to cut wood. The forest is thin here, the trees skeletal and half dead, their branches coated in frost. The axes are dull, the handles splintered. Each swing feels like punishment. The sound echoes through the woods, a slow, rhythmic thud that reminds you of a heartbeat. You gather the branches that fall, tie them together with strips of rope, and haul them back to camp. Your arms ache, your hands blister, and your breath feels like glass in your lungs, but you keep moving. When you return, you see the servants again, bending under loads twice their size. One stumbles, falls to his knees, then gets back up without a sound. No one helps him. Not out of cruelty, just because everyone's too tired to spare the effort. You know how it feels. You've been there too many times. You pass one of the officers' tents again. The flap lifts slightly, and you catch a glimpse inside. There's a small brazier glowing faintly in the corner, the red light dancing across polished armour. A figure sits beside it, shoulders slumped, eyes closed. For a second, you can't tell if he's praying or just resting. Then the flap drops, and the image disappears. You head back toward your own fire, smaller, duller, but at least it's yours. You sit down, hold your hands over it, and breathe slowly. The warmth creeps into your palms, up your wrists, fading before it reaches your elbows. You watch the smoke rise, twisting in the air before vanishing into the snow. It looks the same no matter where it comes from a lord's brazier or a soldier's pit. Heat, light, and then nothing. As evening comes, the camp quiets again. The officers return from their rounds. The servants hurry to prepare what little food remains. The soldiers gather closer to the fires, their faces lit by the dim glow. For a few minutes, it almost looks peaceful. You look across the camp and see the Lord's banner again, standing tall in the wind. It flutters weakly, its edges frozen, the emblem barely visible. You imagine him inside, wrapped in furs, sipping hot tea, while scribes record his thoughts for posterity. You imagine him sighing, thinking about glory and destiny. But you know that when the fire dies, he'll be just as cold as the rest of you. The snow starts falling again, soft and relentless. You tilt your head back and watch the flakes drift down, catching briefly on your eyelashes before melting. The air feels heavier, quieter. You take one last look at the camp. The officers, the servants, the soldiers, all moving in slow rhythm, bound by the same exhaustion. breathing the same frozen air. You realise then that the cold has done what no battle ever could. It's made everyone the same. Titles, armour, duty, all buried under the same white blanket. And tomorrow, when the sun rises over this frozen province again, everyone will wake to the same frostbitten morning, still pretending that the difference between them means something. You shift closer to the fire, listening to it crackle weakly, and let the thought fade with the smoke. You lie down with your sword beside you because there's nowhere safer to put it. The habit started on the first night of the march, and by now it's part of who you are. The blade rests within reach, its scabbard touching your thigh, the hilt angled just right so you can grab it without thinking. Every man in camp sleeps like this. You could tell them apart by their helmets, their banners, and their rank. But at night, when the fires burn low and the snow presses against the tents, everyone becomes the same silhouette, a body curled on a straw mat, a blade waiting patiently at their side. You've heard the story since you were young. A samurai never parts from his weapon. His sword is his soul. But whoever came up with that saying probably didn't mean it so literally. Not the way you live it here. In a world where that soul keeps you awake more often than it keeps you alive. The camp is quieter tonight. Or maybe the cold has swallowed the sound. The wind drags across the snow with a long, low hiss that never stops. The fire near your tent has burned down to glowing coals, red and dull like dying eyes. The shadows of the men around you stretch and shiver against the walls, moving in small jerks each time someone shifts or breathes too loudly. You roll onto your side, facing the sword. The light catches on the metal fittings of the scabbard, dull now from frost. You can see your reflection in it, just a faint blur, a pale oval framed in dark. You reach out and brush the hilt with your fingers. The wrapping is stiff, the texture familiar enough that it almost feels like skin. You rest your hand there, not gripping, just touching, the way someone might hold the hand of a friend they don't quite trust. You close your eyes for a moment, but it doesn't last. A sound pulls them open again, a quiet rustle outside, maybe the flap of a tent, maybe a boot on snow. You hold your breath and listen. Nothing follows. The wind returns, steady and constant. You let your breath out slowly, watching it fog the air. The idea of sleep feels strange now, like a luxury from another life. You can't remember the last time you truly surrendered to it. Out here, sleep is something you steal in pieces, never long enough to feel rested. Even when your eyes close, part of you stays awake. An ear tuned to movement, a hand hovering near the sword, your body half ready to rise. The cold teaches that kind of alertness. So does war. You don't dream much anymore. You just drift in and out, waiting for morning like it's another order you can't disobey. You shift slightly, pulling the blanket higher. The straw mat beneath you crunches. Every movement sounds louder in the quiet. You can hear men breathing nearby, slow and uneven. One coughs, then mutters something you can't make out. The man closest to you snores lightly, his breath whistling through a half-blocked nose. You watch the rise and fall of his shoulders, the slow rhythm that proves he's still alive. You envy him for that. Not the sleep, but the peace of it. The trust it takes to close your eyes so completely in a place like this. Trust doesn't come easy here. Not when exhaustion makes tempers short and supplies grow thinner by the day. You've seen men argue over rations, accused each other of theft, come close to drawing blades before someone stepped in. You've heard the stories whispered between camps. Samurai ambushed in their sleep by men they once called brothers. Deserters disappearing into the snow after midnight. You've never seen it happen yourself, but that doesn't matter. The thought is enough. So you keep your hand close to your sword, not because you expect an enemy to creep through the tents, but because the fear of what could happen is worse than what usually does. It keeps you sharp. It keeps you from becoming careless. Outside, the watch changes. You hear the soft clank of armour, the muffled crunch of footsteps on snow. 2 men pass your tent, murmuring quietly. You catch fragments of their conversation. Something about the wind shifting, about footprints near the edge of the ridge. It's probably nothing. It's always probably nothing. But the human mind has a way of feeding on small fears when it's too cold to think about anything else. You lie there and listen to them fade away. The quiet that follows feels heavier, thicker somehow. You pull the blanket up to your chin and stare at the roof of the tent, at the way the fabric moves in time with the wind. The candle beside you has burned low. The wax has hardened around its base, trapping the last bit of flame in a small puddle of shadow. You think about blowing it out, then decide against it. The light makes the tent feel less like a tomb. You glance again at your sword. You remember when it was new, the way the black lacquer shone, the sharpness of the edge, the weight balanced perfectly in your hand. You remember the man who forged it, the smell of hot metal and pine smoke, the sound of the hammer striking iron. He told you the blade would outlive you. He said that as if it were a blessing. You believed him then. Now you're not sure. You run your thumb along the edge of the guard. The metal is cold enough to numb your skin. You whisper something without meaning to. Not a prayer exactly, just a quiet plea to no one in particular that you'll wake up again tomorrow. You're not even sure when you started doing that. The tent creaks as the wind pushes harder. Snow slides off in chunks, landing with soft thuds that echo through the night. Somewhere nearby, a horse snorts, restless. The sound is followed by a brief jingle of tack, then silence again. You try to count the seconds between gusts, but you lose track after a while. The rhythm of it blends with the rhythm of your breath until you can't tell one from the other. You think of the men on watch. They stand out there in the open, their armour stiff with frost, their faces hidden behind scarves. You've taken that shift before. You know how it feels. The weight of the spear in your hands, the endless waiting, the way your thoughts drift toward warmth and never find it. The fear doesn't come from what might attack, but from how easy it would be to close your eyes and let the cold do its work. The candle flickers suddenly, the flame shrinking before swelling again. The movement catches your eye, and you glance toward the flap of the tent. It moves slightly, not from the wind, but something slower, more deliberate. You sit up, hand on your sword. The sound stops. A moment later, a quiet voice calls your name. You recognize it. One of the guards coming to check the tents. You let go of the hilt, your fingers stiff. He asks if everything's fine. You nod, though he can't see you, and say yes. He moves on. The flap settles back into place. You lie down again, heart still beating faster than it should. The fire outside has died completely now, leaving only the faint red glow of the coals. The air inside feels colder, thicker. You pull the blanket tighter around yourself and shift closer to the sword until it's pressed against your side. You can feel the chill of the scabbard seeping through the fabric. It's uncomfortable, but it's also grounding. You know where it is. You know what it means. Your mind drifts while your body stays tense. You think about the first battle you ever saw. Not the glory or the noise, but the aftermath. The silence that came when the shouting stopped. The weight of your own armour as you stood among bodies that didn't move anymore. You remember the smell of blood on cold air, how it froze almost instantly, turning red to brown before you could wipe it away. You remember realising that some of the faces on the ground weren't strangers. That feeling never really leaves you. You roll onto your back and stare at the ceiling again. The frost has grown thicker, small crystals glittering faintly in the candlelight. You reach up and brush your fingers against them. They melt instantly, leaving tiny drops that slide down onto your face. You close your eyes and let them run down to your lips. The taste is clean, sharp, and bitter. Somewhere outside, a crow calls out, harsh and short. The sound makes you shiver, not from cold, but from recognition. Crows don't sleep much either. They circle above camps like this, waiting for whatever the night leaves behind. You tell yourself it's just another sound, nothing more. Still, your hand finds the hilt again. You stay that way for a long time, awake but not alert, floating in that grey space between rest and vigilance. You listen to every creak, every sigh of wind, every shuffle of straw. Your eyes close for seconds at a time, but your hand never leaves the sword. It's an old dance now. Trust and fear, both partners in the same slow rhythm. Eventually, you start to drift. The cold numbs your face, your fingers. Your breathing slows. You dream maybe, or maybe you don't. The images that come are faint and colourless. Snow, blades, faces you can't name. The sound of steel clashing fades into the wind. Then a shout cuts through the night. You're awake before your mind catches up. Hand gripping the sword, blanket falling away. Another shout follows, farther off. Someone running. You sit up, the tent swaying slightly. The noise lasts only a few seconds before silence returns. You wait. Nothing. Just the wind again, calm and endless. Maybe it was an accident. Maybe a patrol startled an animal. Maybe someone finally broke under the weight of it all. You'll never know. You lower the sword slowly, the tension draining from your arm. The muscles in your shoulders ache. You exhale, long and quiet, and lie back down. The candle's flame trembles, almost gone. You reach out, pinch the wick, and snuff it out. The darkness is total, but it feels lighter somehow, like a blanket pulled over the world. You turn onto your side, the sword still beside you, its cold edge pressing faintly against your leg. You tell yourself you'll sleep this time, really sleep. Just for a little while. Just until dawn. Outside, the guards whisper to each other, their voices fading with the wind. The snow keeps falling, soft and relentless, covering everything. The tents, the footprints, the evidence of fear. Inside, you close your eyes, surrounded by silence and steel, trusting nothing and no one except the blade that watches over you. And in that fragile, uneasy peace, you finally drift somewhere between rest and readiness, knowing that if the night wants you, it will take you, but not without a fight. The snow hasn't stopped for 3 days. You've lost count of how many times you've brushed it off your armour, your tent, your face. It falls quietly, endlessly, as if the sky itself has forgotten how to do anything else. Each morning looks the same. Pale light filtered through white air. The world reduced to shapes and shadows. You wake, eat, march, and sleep, though the words don't mean what they used to. The snow has erased everything familiar and replaced it with one colour, one sound, one cold that fills every space left inside you. The camp sits at the edge of a frozen river. In summer, this place might have been beautiful. Green hills, water running clear, birds in the trees. Now it's a wasteland of ice and silence. The river is sealed under a thick crust that groans when you walk near it. The trees stand bare, their branches black against the white sky. Smoke from the fires drifts straight up, vanishing before it reaches the clouds. The world feels paused, as if holding its breath. You pull your cloak tighter and walk between the rows of tents. The snow muffles your steps, but the crunch of it still echoes faintly. Everywhere you look, men move like ghosts. They don't talk much anymore. Even the laughter that used to fill the mornings is gone, smothered by the weather. No one has the energy for it. You can read the exhaustion in their eyes, in the slow, stiff movements of their hands. The cold doesn't just wear down the body, it wears down everything else. Patience, loyalty, will. The fires smoke more than they burn. The wood is damp, and every spark feels like an argument between the flame and the snow. You pass one of the pits where men are gathered, their faces red from the heat, their backs coated in frost. They talk quietly about rumours, supplies running low, a scouting party gone a-missing, the enemy encamped somewhere to the north. You don't join in. You just stand there for a while, palms open to the fire, staring at the way the smoke twists upward. It's hypnotic. It reminds you that movement still exists somewhere, even if you can barely feel it. Further down, the horses stand tethered near the edge of camp. Their breath rises in thick clouds, manes stiff with ice. Some paw at the snow, looking for grass that isn't there. Others simply stand, eyes half closed, waiting. The stable boys move between them with buckets of frozen water and handfuls of grain. You watch them for a moment and think about how even the strongest creatures can look fragile in weather like this. You rub your own hands together, blowing into them until the skin tingles, then keep walking. The officer's tent sits higher on the ridge, marked by a banner that barely moves in the wind. The symbol of the clan, once bright and proud, is faded now, its edges frayed from frost. You remember the day it was raised, the ceremony, the shouts, the promises of victory. None of that matters anymore. Flags don't keep anyone warm. You see two guards posted near the entrance, their armour dusted white, their faces hidden under scarves. They stand perfectly still, like statues carved from ice. You turn away and head towards the perimeter. The path is uneven, covered in drifts that swallow your boots. Your legs ache with every step. You pass the watchtowers, if you can call them that. Little more than wooden platforms built into the trees. The men up there huddle under makeshift roofs, eyes half closed against the wind. You nod to one of them. He nods back, the motion slow, deliberate. You both know there's nothing to report. The snow hides everything, even danger. The silence of the camp isn't peaceful. It's heavy, almost oppressive. You can hear your own thoughts too clearly in it, and most of them aren't worth hearing. Sometimes you think you can hear voices carried on the wind. A whisper, a laugh, a cry. But when you stop to listen, there's nothing. Just the endless hiss of falling snow. You wonder if it's the ghosts of those who didn't survive last winter, or just your mind trying to fill the emptiness. When the sun reaches its highest point, though it barely looks different from morning, the signal for midday meal is given. The cooks scrape ice from their pots, melt snow for water, and stir what little rice remains. You line up with the others, bowl in hand, waiting for your turn. The smell is faint and sour, but it's enough to make your stomach twist. The man ladling the food looks half asleep. His hands tremble as he fills each bowl. You take yours, nod, and move aside. You eat standing up, because sitting means getting cold again. The rice sticks to your teeth, the broth thin and metallic. You chew slowly, letting each mouthful linger as long as possible. Around you, men do the same, eyes down, focused on the small comfort of food. There's no talking, no sound except the quiet scrape of wooden spoons against bowls. You could close your eyes and forget you're surrounded by an army. It feels more like a monastery of exhaustion than a camp of warriors. After the meal, you return to your duties. You help carry logs to one of the larger fires, stacking them carefully. The smoke stings your eyes. When you step back, your clothes smell like burning pine. You welcome it. It's the only scent left that doesn't remind you of rot or cold. As the light fades, you can see how the snow has shaped everything. The tents sag under its weight, the ropes creaking in protest. The paths between them have turned into narrow trenches, walls of white on either side. Men move through them like ants in tunnels. You help one of them dig out an entrance where the snow has buried it completely. The work keeps you warm for a little while, but when you stop, the cold returns twice as strong. Someone nearby starts coughing deep and wet. The sound cuts through the quiet like a blade. Everyone looks over, but no one moves to help. There's nothing to be done anyway. Illness moves faster than the wind in camps like this. Once it starts, it doesn't stop. You've seen it before. A man coughs one night and is gone by the next morning. The body is wrapped in cloth and carried out to the woods, buried shallow because the ground is too hard to dig deep. The snow covers the mount within hours, and no one speaks of it again. You head back to your tent as the first stars appear, faint, barely visible through the clouds. The camp looks different at night, almost beautiful if you forget what it means. The fires glow like scattered jewels across the snow, small pockets of orange light in a sea of white. You pause for a moment to take it in. It's easy to imagine, just for a heartbeat, that this could be peace instead of war. Then the wind picks up again, erasing the thought. Inside your tent, you light a candle and sit down on your mat. The wax flickers weakly, casting soft shadows across the cloth walls. Your armour rests beside you, your sword within reach, as always. You run your hand over the lacquered plates, feeling the chill trapped in them. They look like they belong to someone else now. Someone stronger, cleaner, unbroken. You take off your gloves and flex your fingers. The skin is cracked, raw at the joints. You can't remember the last time they didn't hurt. Outside, someone calls out to change the watch. Voices answer back, muffled by snow. The sound feels distant, unreal. You lie down, pulling the blanket over yourself. The mat beneath you is uneven, but you barely notice. You close your eyes and try to imagine warmth. The image that comes isn't of a fire or a hearth, but of sunlight. That heavy, golden light of early summer, when everything hums with heat. You can almost feel it on your face before the wind leaks through the seams again and steals it away. You open your eyes. The candle's flame has grown smaller, trembling in the draught. You watch it for a while, half expecting it to die before morning. You wouldn't be surprised if it did. Nothing lasts long here. You hear footsteps outside, then a quiet voice. The guard making rounds again. He asks if everything is fine. You say yes, though you're not sure what that word even means anymore. Fine means alive, and alive is good enough. He moves on. The snow continues to fall, steady and soft. It covers everything: the armour, the tents, the footprints, the dead. It erases the lines that separate one day from the next, one man from another. In the morning when you wake, it will all look new again, untouched, as if the war never happened at all. You pulled a blanket tighter, your sword cold against your leg, and listen to the silence of the camp. That deep, constant quiet that only comes when the world itself seems to be sleeping. You breathe slowly, matching the rhythm of the wind. Somewhere far off, a temple bell rings. The sound drifts through the valley, faint but clear. You don't know where it's coming from. Maybe a village miles away, maybe just your imagination. But you let it fill the space between your thoughts. The note lingers, long and low, before fading back into the snow. You close your eyes again. The silence returns, heavier than before, settling over the camp like another blanket. You can hear your heartbeat in your ears, steady, slow, reminding you that the world hasn't completely frozen yet. You wonder how many more nights like this the army can endure. How many more mornings will begin with the same grey light and the same thin air. You tell yourself it doesn't matter. You'll get through this one first. Then you'll think about the next. That's how survival works out here. One fire, one meal, one breath at a time. The snow whispers against the tent walls. You breathe it in and let your eyes drift closed. Somewhere outside, the guards shuffle their feet to keep warm. The horses snort softly. The wind carries the faint sound of prayer from one of the tents. It's not loud enough to hear the words, but you recognise the tone. Quiet, resigned, still human. You fall into that strange half-sleep again, where the world feels far away, but your hand never leaves the sword. The snow keeps falling. The silence deepens. And the camp, that fragile collection of men and fire and faith, holds together for one more night beneath the unending weight of winter. You can tell when sickness starts spreading through the camp. It happens slowly, without noise or panic, like another kind of weather settling in. The coughs begin first. A few men clearing their throats at night. A rough sound muffled under blankets. Then the sneezing, the wheezing, the whispers about someone who didn't wake up that morning. Before long, it feels like the entire camp is breathing through the same fever. You feel it in the air. It's thicker, damp with the smell of sweat and smoke. The fires burn constantly now, but the heat is thin, unable to dry the cold that clings to every surface. Steam rises from pots of boiling herbs, the kind that promise comfort more than cure. The healers move between tents, wrapped in the same rags as everyone else, their faces grey, their hands trembling from cold and exhaustion. You sit outside your tent one morning and watch them work. One tends to a man lying on a mat near the fire. His lips are blue, his skin pale and slick with sweat. The healer presses a hand to his forehead, mutters something you can't hear, then reaches for a small bowl of dark liquid. He tips it into the man's mouth, and most of it spills down his chin. The man coughs weakly, eyes fluttering. The healer wipes his face with a rag that's already dirty, sighs and moves to the next tent. You look away, not because you can't stand it, but because you've seen it before. Everyone has. Out here, illness is just another enemy, invisible, patient, and impossible to kill. The cold helps it spread. The damp helps it settle, and the body, worn thin from hunger and exhaustion, gives up before the fight even begins. You rub your hands together and feel a stiffness in your knuckles. The skin is cracked, split from the dry air and rough cloth. When you touch the wound on your thumb, it stings. You glance at it and see a faint red line creeping upward. You know what that means. Infection. Nothing dramatic yet, but you've heard the stories. A small cut can become a fever. A fever can become death. You think about going to the healer, but the idea feels almost foolish. Their remedies hurt as much as the wounds themselves. You've seen them cauterize cuts with hot iron, seen them pour vinegar into open gashes, seen men bite down on sticks to keep from screaming. You flex your hand, wipe the blood away, and tell yourself it will heal on its own. You know it won't, but you say it anyway. Around you the camp looks quieter than usual. The sick are kept in their tents now, their coughing muffled behind the walls. The fires outside burn low, tended by the few still strong enough to move. The snow continues to fall, soft and constant, covering the signs of suffering like a blanket trying to hide the truth. You walk toward the healer's area anyway, more out of curiosity than hope. The smell hits you before you reach it, a mix of herbs, smoke, and sickness. The air inside the tent is heavy, warm from the fires, wet with breath. A dozen men lie on mats, their faces pale, eyes half open, some whispering prayers, others too tired to speak. The healer moves from one to the next, pressing cloth soaked in hot water against foreheads, muttering about balance and spirits and the will of the gods. You know it's not about spirits. It's about cold and exhaustion and wounds that never close. But you don't say anything. In the corner a man moans softly. His arm is bandaged tightly, stained through with blood. The healer kneels beside him, unwraps the cloth, and you see the wound. A long gash, black at the edges, the flesh swollen and angry. The healer dips a rag into a bowl of something brown and thick, then presses it to the wound. The man jerks, his whole body shaking. He bites down on a piece of wood and breathes through his nose. The healer keeps working, silent and calm. When it's done, the man lies still, tears frozen at the corners of his eyes. You leave before the smell of blood settles into your clothes. Outside, the air feels colder, sharper. You breathe deeply, trying to clear your head, but the image stays with you. The blackened flesh, the trembling hands, the quiet patience of a man who knows it probably won't matter. Back at your tent, you clean your own wound with snow. It burns. You wrap it with a strip of cloth torn from your sleeve and tell yourself that's enough. You've learned to treat pain as routine. You don't wince anymore when the skin splits or when the blood freezes before it dries. The body becomes a map of small compromises. What you can ignore, what you can't, what you'll deal with tomorrow if tomorrow comes. Later that night, someone outside calls for help. You step out and see a small group gathered around a fallen soldier. He's shaking violently, breath coming in gasps. The healer arrives with a pot of steaming water, shouting for space. You step back. The water smells of herbs. Mugwort, ginger, maybe pine. It's the same mixture they give everyone, the one that doesn't really cure anything but makes it look like something's being done. The healer forces the man to drink. Most of it spills out again. The man's eyes roll back, his hands clawing at the air. Then they stop moving. No one says anything. The healer checks his pulse, then covers his face with a cloth. The others stand there for a moment, staring at the body, until the healer waves them away. 2 men drag the corpse toward the edge of camp. You turn and go back inside your tent, because there's nothing else to do. You sit in the dark, listening to the wind press against the walls. The sound feels endless. You think about the man outside. How quickly the body can turn from alive to not. You wonder if the snow will bury him before morning, or if someone will take the time to dig a grave. You tell yourself it doesn't matter. The snow will cover everything soon enough. The next morning, the healer visits your tent. He looked older than he did yesterday, his eyes sunken, his beard rimed with frost. He asks if anyone is sick. You shake your head. He nods and moves on, carrying his bowl of herbs. You notice that his hands are shaking too. No one is immune to this place. By midday, the coughing grows louder again. You try not to notice, but it's everywhere. In the tents, by the fires, echoing through the trees. It becomes a kind of rhythm, one you can't escape. The air tastes different now, heavy with sickness. The fires smoke thicker, as if the wood itself is trying to protest. You sit by the fire with a few others, holding your hands out to the heat. One of the men coughs, wipes his mouth with his sleeve, and keeps talking as if nothing happened. You see the red smear, the bright colour against the dull grey of his coat. You say nothing. No one does. What would you say? That night, the healer's tent glows brighter than the rest. You can see the light flickering through the snow, shadows moving inside. The smell of burning herbs drifts across camp, thick and bitter. You lie on your mat, listening to the crackle of fire and the muffled cries from inside that tent. You tell yourself that the herbs help. Maybe they do. Maybe the mind can trick itself into believing in anything if it needs to. Your hand throbs again. You unwrap the bandage and see the cut is worse. The red line has spread further. You press your thumb against it and feel the warmth of infection beneath the skin. You tear another strip of cloth from your tunic, dip it in snow, and wrap it again. The pain sharpens, then dulls. You stare at it for a long time, wondering if it's better to go to the healer or to let nature decide. You think about how fragile the body really is. Men spend their lives training for battle, mastering sword and bow, learning how to kill and not be killed. But all it takes is a small wound, a cough, a bit of bad water. You remember a man from early in the campaign, strong as an ox, who sliced his leg on a broken spear. He laughed it off. A week later he was gone. No fight, no glory, just fever and silence. You reach for your sword, not to use it, just to feel it. The hilt is cold, the metal unforgiving. You think about how strange it is that you trust this piece of steel more than your own body. At least you know what the sword will do. The body is unpredictable, treacherous, fragile. The snow outside grows heavier again. You can hear it piling against the tent, a soft, constant weight. The fires hiss as flakes fall into them. Somewhere in the distance, someone cries out, not from fear, but pain. It's a raw, short sound, followed by silence. You close your eyes. The noise blends with the wind until you can't tell which is which. You drift in and out of sleep, half aware of your breathing, half waiting for the cough to start in your own chest. When you wake, your throat is dry, your skin sticky with sweat. You sit up slowly, reaching for your water bowl. The liquid inside is half frozen. You sip it anyway. The cold slides down your throat, shocking but clean. Morning comes again, or what passes for it. The sky looks the same, pale and indifferent. You step outside and see new mounds of snow at the edge of camp. You don't need to ask what they are. The healers have stopped digging deep. The ground's too hard now. You stand there for a long time, watching the wind smooth the surface of the snow until the mounds disappear. The camp looks whole again, untouched, as if nothing happened. You turn away and pull your cloak tighter. Back at the fire, someone hands you a bowl of rice and tells you to eat while it's warm. You take it, though your appetite's gone. The steam fogs your face, the smell mixing with the smoke in your hair. You chew slowly, swallowing because it's something to do. The man beside you coughs again, a low rattle that doesn't stop. You stare into the fire and keep eating. By the end of the day, the coughing has quieted. Not because it's better, but because there are fewer voices left to make it. The healer moves slower now, his supplies almost gone. The herbs have lost their scent. The fires burn low. The air feels still again, waiting. You sit beside your tent as the sun fades, your bandaged hand resting on your knee. It throbs in time with your heartbeat. You look at the horizon, a line of grey fading into darker grey, and you think about how strange it is that the world keeps moving even when everything inside the camp feels frozen. You close your eyes for a moment, listening to the snow fall. It sounds the same as always. Soft, endless, patient. You breathe it in and let it settle. Another day gone. Another night coming. Another chance to stay alive if your body lets you. You notice the smell before you notice anything else. It never really leaves. It just changes shape with the wind. Some days it's smoke and sweat. Other days wet leather and horses. It lives in your clothes, in your armour, in the frozen fibres of the tent itself. You've tried to ignore it, but after weeks of this, it's as much a part of the camp as the snow. This morning the air is still, the kind of cold that makes sound travel farther. You pull the tent flap aside and step out. The sky is the colour of steel, the clouds stretched thin like smoke across the horizon. The camp stirs slowly, men rising from their straw mats, horses shaking ice from their manes, fires coughing back to life. Every movement releases the same dull mixture of smells. Sweat that never fully washed away, unclean wool, boiled rice, and the faint sourness of rotting provisions. You draw a deep breath, then regret it immediately. The air tastes of ash. The fires burned low through the night, fed by wet wood and scraps of whatever could be found. The smoke clings to everything, faces, blankets, armour, until it becomes a kind of second skin. You can feel it in your hair, in your lungs. You cough once and taste the bitterness of it. A horse snorts nearby, shaking its head, its breath curling into the air. You walk toward the stables, though calling them that feels generous. They're just a row of crude shelters built from poles and straw, their roofs sagging under snow. The animals stand close together for warmth, eyes dull, hides streaked with sweat and frost. The smell hits you before you reach them, a thick mix of manure, wet hay, and animal heat. In another time, it might have been comforting, earthy, alive. Now it's just heavy. The cold doesn't erase it, it preserves it. The stable boy greets you with a nod. He's young, his face cracked from wind, his hands raw. He's been working since before dawn, shoveling frozen dung into piles that steam faintly in the morning light. He tells you one of the horses went lame during the night. You follow him to the far end and see it. A dark stallion lying on its side, legs trembling. Frost clings to its eyelashes. The boy strokes its neck, murmuring something you can't hear. The animal tries to rise, then falls back. The sound it makes is quiet but deep, a kind of groan that sits in your chest long after it stops. You look away. You've seen too much death to be sentimental, but this kind is different. When men die, there's ceremony, even if it's rushed. When horses die, they're dragged away before anyone has time to look. You walk back toward the main camp, breathing shallowly. The air still carries that smell, the mix of life decaying slowly, preserved by frost. By mid-morning, the fires burn stronger. The cooks are boiling water for rice again, and the smell of smoke thickens until it feels solid. You squat near one of the pits, holding your hands out to the flames. The smoke stings your eyes, but you don't move away. You need the heat more than clean air. The wood hisses and pops, throwing out sparks that die before they touch the snow. Someone adds fish to a pot, dried, hard, the kind that's been carried for weeks. The smell rises immediately, sharp and salty, cutting through the smoke. It reminds you of the coast, of warm air and markets, of something that doesn't belong in this place. But here, in this frozen valley, it's just another layer on top of the rest. Fish, smoke, sweat and death all blending together until the senses can't tell them apart. A soldier beside you pulls off his gloves and rubs his hands together. His fingernails are blackened with dirt and frostbite. He jokes that the smell keeps demons away. You half smile. Maybe he's right. Maybe it keeps the living away too. As the day goes on, the air thickens. The fires multiply, and so does the smoke. You can barely see the far side of camp through the grey haze. It wraps around the tent like fog, clinging to the damp cloth. It seeps into everything. Your hair, your armour, your breath. You could wash for hours, and it would still be there. You move through the camp, past soldiers repairing armour and sharpening blades. The sound of grinding steel cuts through the muffled quiet. Each strike sends up a faint metallic smell, clean and sharp for just a moment before the wind covers it with ash again. You pass a line of helmets laid out to dry beside a fire. Their lacquer glistens faintly under soot. Someone coughs nearby, spits into the snow, and wipes his mouth. The spit freezes before it sinks. The commander walks by with a small entourage. His cloak is lined with fur, but it doesn't make him look warmer, just heavier. The men straighten as he passes, though no one says much. He nods once, eyes fixed ahead, and disappears into his tent. You notice the smell he leaves behind. Incense, faint but deliberate, something brought from home to mask the reality of the camp. You wonder if it works for him. You wonder how long it will take before even incense starts to smell like smoke and sweat. As evening approaches, the air changes again. The wind shifts direction, pushing the smoke downward. It moves through the camp like a living thing, curling around legs and tents, hiding faces behind grey veils. You pull your scarf higher and keep walking. The smell is overwhelming now, a mix of everything that keeps an army alive, and everything that's slowly killing it. Someone burns old scraps of armour cords to keep the fire going. The lacquer and silk give off a sharp, chemical stench that makes your eyes water. You step back, but there's no clean air anywhere. The wind carries the smell of burning cloth one way and the stables another. You breathe through your sleeve, but it doesn't help. The horses grow restless at night. You hear them stamping, snorting, pulling at their ropes. The sound mixes with the low murmur of voices from the guards. You lie on your mat, the smell of smoke still clinging to your blanket, and listen. Every breath brings a new layer. Sweat trapped in the folds of your clothes. The faint rot of food that froze, thawed, and froze again. The metallic tang of oil and blood that never fully left your armour. You remember what it felt like before the campaign. The clean scent of rice straw. The faint sweetness of polished wood. The smell of rain on the garden stones outside your home. You can barely recall it now. Those scents belong to a world that no longer seems real. Here, the cold traps everything in place. Nothing fades, nothing changes, it just lingers. A gust of wind shakes the tent. You hear men outside adding wood to the fire, their voices muffled. One laughs hoarsely, a sound that breaks into a cough. The smoke thickens again, seeping through the seams, filling the tent with its acrid warmth. You close your eyes, pretending it's the smell of something else, anything else. But the illusion doesn't last. You think about how strange it is that even the foulest air feels necessary now. The smoke is proof of life. It means the fires are still burning, the horses still breathing, the men still moving. If it stopped, the silence would be unbearable. The stench means you're still here. When dawn comes again, the camp smells the same. It always does. You crawl out from under your blanket, eyes watering, throat raw from breathing smoke all night. The fires have died down to black circles surrounded by ash. Steam rises from the stables where the snow melts against warm hides. The wind carries the faint scent of iron and sweat. You realise it doesn't disgust you anymore. It's just the way the world is now. The healer passes by with a bowl of burning herbs, waving it through the air to ward off sickness. The smell is strong, bitter, almost sweet. For a moment it cuts through the usual stench, and you breathe deeply, savouring the brief illusion of cleanliness. Then the smoke fades, and the old smells return, heavier than before. You walk toward the river, what's left of it. The surface is still frozen, but cracks run through the ice where the current fights beneath. You kneel and chip away a small hole with your knife. The water that surfaces is black and smells faintly of iron. You splash some on your face. The cold shocks you awake. The air smells sharper here, cleaner somehow, though even it carries the faint scent of smoke drifting from the camp behind you. You stand there for a while, watching the wind move across the white hills, thinking about how scent becomes memory. You know that when this war ends, if it ever ends, this is what you'll remember most. Not the battles, not the banners, not the names, the smell, the cold air thick with fire and filth, horses and men sharing the same breath. You take one last look at the camp, the columns of smoke rising into the dull sky, the figures moving through it like shadows, the faint smell of burning pine mixing with decay. It's ugly, but it's alive. And out here, that's enough. You turn back toward your tent, the air following you like a second skin. You know you'll carry it for the rest of your life. This stench of men and war, of cold and smoke. No matter how many times you wash or how far you go. You crawl under the blanket again, eyes stinging, lungs heavy, and let the smell fill the small space around you. It's unpleasant, but familiar. It reminds you that morning has come, that the fires are still burning, and that the world, for all its rotten frost, hasn't yet gone quiet. And so you lie there, breathing in the proof of your own endurance, while outside the camp exhales another cloud of smoke into the endless grey sky. You wake before dawn again, not because you want to, but because your body doesn't know the difference between rest and waiting anymore. The air inside your tent is so cold that each breath burns going in and leaves your lips cracked when it goes out. The straw beneath you creaks as you shift. You rub your hands together, watching the faint glow of your own breath drift upward. Outside, someone strikes flint. The sound of metal on stone cuts through the silence. Sharp, small, deliberate. You lie there a moment longer, eyes open, letting the cold seep through your layers until it feels like part of you. In a strange way, it's easier that way. The resistance only makes it worse. You've learned to meet the cold the way you would meet an enemy, not with anger, but with stillness. If you move too fast, it wins. If you fight it, it stays longer. The men who can survive out here are the ones who treat suffering like a teacher. That's what they say, at least. That endurance is its own kind of religion. You hear it every day from the officers, from the monks who march with the army, from the old men who remember other winters. Pain is the forge of the spirit, they tell you. Discipline is the path to peace. You've heard it enough times that you can recite it without thinking, but out here, words like that sound different. They stop being ideas and start feeling like instructions. You sit up, legs stiff, back aching from another night spent half awake. You reach for your armour and start to dress. The cold metal bites your skin, but you barely flinch. You do it slowly, methodically, each strap tied, each cord tightened, each piece layered exactly as it should be. It's not just habit anymore, it's ritual. You've done it so many times that it feels like prayer. Every knot is a reminder that the world is still under your control, even if only for a few seconds. Outside, the camp is already stirring. Men move through the pale light with the same weary precision. No rush, no conversation, just quiet motion. The fires smoke rather than burn, and the wind carries the scent of wet ash and boiled rice. Somewhere near the ridge, a monk is chanting, his voice low and steady, a single note rising and falling against the wind. The sound doesn't travel far, but it holds the camp together in a strange way. You don't understand every word, but you don't need to. You've learned that meaning doesn't always come from language. Sometimes it comes from rhythm, from doing the same thing over and over until it becomes truth. You join the others by the fire, crouching close to the heat that barely exists. One man is reciting a verse under his breath, words from the Heart Sutra, the one the monks taught you before the march began. Form is emptiness, emptiness is form. You used to think it was nonsense, a phrase that sounded profound because no one could explain it. But out here, you start to understand in a way that doesn't need explanation. The snow, the hunger, the pain, the silence, it's all emptiness. And yet, it's the only form your life has left. A samurai's worth, they say, lies in his ability to endure. That's what Bushido really means when you strip away the ceremony. Not grand speeches or perfect death, but quiet endurance. You follow orders. You obey without question. You accept the cold, the hunger, the fear. You survive because not surviving is a kind of failure. Out here, in this endless white world, honour looks a lot like frostbite. The officer walks past, his armour spotless despite the weather. His face is calm, unreadable, the way a mask would be. You can't tell if he's freezing or just pretending not to. Maybe both. You bow slightly as he passes. He nods once. That's all the acknowledgement you'll ever get, and somehow it feels like enough. Discipline isn't about being seen. It's about disappearing into duty until you don't know where it ends and you begin. You finish your rice in silence, swallowing each mouthful slowly. The fire pops once, sending a spark into the snow. You watch it fade. Around you, no one speaks. Words are heavy in this kind of cold, and no one wants to waste breath on anything that doesn't keep them alive. The monk finishes his chant and moves through the camp, sprinkling water from a small bowl. It freezes before it hits the ground. He nods to each man he passes, eyes bright in his weathered face. When he reaches you, he pauses for a moment and says quietly, "The body is temporary, but the will is eternal." You nod. It sounds nice when he says it. You wish it felt true. The rest of the day passes the way every day does, slowly, with purpose and repetition. The officers inspect the lines, the soldiers check weapons, the fires are rebuilt. You practice sword drills in the snow, the same movements you've done 1,000 times. Your hands ache from gripping the hilt, but you don't stop. The motion is simple, predictable, controlled. Every swing is a reminder that you can still move with intention, even when everything else feels beyond control. The monks watch from a distance, murmuring prayers between the cracks of wind. They talk about mindfulness, about awareness, about how the path to enlightenment is walked one breath at a time. You don't know about enlightenment, but you do know that counting your breaths helps. 1, 2, 3. The mind quiets. The world narrows to what's in front of you. The cold becomes less of an enemy and more of a fact. By evening, the snow starts again. You kneel by the fire and rub oil into your blade. The metal reflects the orange light, warped by the heat waves rising from the coals. You think about the men who didn't make it this far, the ones who cracked under the cold, the ones who deserted, the ones who stopped believing that duty meant anything. You used to judge them. Now you just hope their final moments were warm. The wind picks up, scattering sparks into the night. You pull your cloak tighter and stare into the fire. A few men nearby are meditating, sitting perfectly still despite the snow collecting on their shoulders. You've tried it before, sitting without moving, letting the body freeze while the mind stays awake. At first it felt impossible. Every muscle screamed to move, to shiver, to breathe faster. But after a while something shifted. The pain didn't vanish, but it stopped mattering. The body became background noise, and the mind floated above it. For a few seconds, you understood what the monks meant when they said that stillness could be freedom. You try it again now. You close your eyes, straighten your back, and rest your hands on your knees. The cold presses against your skin like a wall. You feel your heartbeat slow, your breath steady. The sounds of the camp blur, the crackle of fire, the distant cough, the soft creak of wood. Everything blends together into one long, slow moment. You think about the lessons drilled into you since you were young. Loyalty, obedience, restraint. You think about how Bushido isn't something you believe in. It's something you live inside. It's not about dying well. It's about living through the parts that feel impossible. You think about how every hardship, every bruise, every frozen night has become part of the same training. The body suffers so the spirit can stay still. A gust of wind breaks your concentration. You open your eyes. The fire has burned lower, the coals pulsing red. The men who were meditating beside you have returned to their tents. You stand slowly, joints stiff, and brush the snow off your cloak. The sky is darker now, a deep grey fading into black. You can see faint stars through the clouds. You wonder if the monks see the same stars when they pray, or if they've learned to look past them entirely. You walk back to your tent, footsteps crunching softly. Inside, the air is stale with smoke and breath. You sit down, remove your armour piece by piece, and lay it beside you. The sound of metal against straw is strangely soothing. You wrap yourself in the blanket and close your eyes again, but not to sleep this time. You focus on your breathing, on the rhythm the monks always talk about. In, out, steady, calm. The cold presses in from all sides. You feel it in your bones, in the back of your throat, in your teeth. You tell yourself it's just sensation, nothing more. You picture it as smoke, something that can move through you without staying. The body aches, but the mind stays still. That's what they teach, isn't it? That the warrior's heart must be quiet even when everything else is breaking. Outside, the wind hums low, carrying the faint echo of chanting from another part of the camp. You can't make out the words, but you know the rhythm. Slow, unending, a voice shaped by centuries of practice. It weaves through the tents, through the snow, through your breath. You start to hum along without realizing it, your voice barely above a whisper. Time slips by unnoticed. The candle burns halfway down, then almost to the base. You don't sleep, not really. You rest in that grey space between wakefulness and stillness, where thought fades and sensation takes its place. The monks say that enlightenment is found in the space between pain and peace. If that's true, you must be close. When the candle finally dies, the darkness feels natural. You can hear your heartbeat, slow and even. You breathe in the cold, let it fill your chest, and breathe it out again. Somewhere outside, a man shouts an order. Somewhere else, a horse neighs. The world keeps moving, but inside your tent, everything is still. You think about discipline, not the kind that wins battles, but the kind that keeps you alive when no one's watching. The kind that tells you to sit still when the body wants to run, to keep breathing when it hurts, to wake up each day knowing the cold will be waiting. You think about how, in its own quiet way, this too is a kind of worship. The wind shifts. Snow slides down the side of your tent, landing softly against the ground. You pull the blanket tighter and let the sound lull you. You realise you're not cold anymore, not because the air has changed, but because you've stopped measuring it. You close your eyes, the faint echo of chanting still in your ears, and drift into a silence that feels almost sacred. Out here, in the endless winter, belief isn't a matter of temples or gods. It's the simple, stubborn act of enduring, breath after breath, night after night, until even the cold begins to feel like faith. You start dreaming of spring without meaning to. It comes quietly, like the memory of a scent you can't place, soft and far away, but impossible to ignore. Maybe it's because of the cold, the body reaching backward toward warmth, the mind searching for something that still feels alive. Or maybe it's because you've been here too long, surrounded by snow and smoke, and your thoughts have begun to wander to the world that used to exist beyond all this. You wake before dawn again, as usual, but this time something feels different. The air inside the tent smells faintly of smoke and rice, but underneath it there's another smell, a trick of memory that seems to come from nowhere. You close your eyes and recognize it instantly. Cherry blossoms. Faint, sweet, delicate. You can almost see them. The pale petals falling through warm air, drifting onto riverbanks and temple roofs. The sound of running water, the hum of insects, and the echo of laughter somewhere you can't quite remember. You open your eyes and stare at the ceiling. The smell is gone. It was never there. Just another ghost from a warmer season. The breath that leaves your lips fogs the air, and you pull the blanket tighter. For a few seconds, you stay like that, caught between the world you're in and the one your mind keeps rebuilding. When you step outside, the camp is quiet, still wrapped in that half-darkness before morning. The snow has stopped for now. A thin mist hangs over the ground, glowing faintly under the pale sky. The air is sharp enough to make your eyes water. You breathe in and watch the vapour rise, imagining it's the steam from tea poured on a warm spring morning. It's a small lie, but you let it stay. You walk toward the river, or what's left of it. The ice glistens faintly under the weak light. You crouch down and chip a piece off with your knife. It cracks cleanly, echoing through the valley. The sound reminds you of the clack of bamboo wind chimes, the ones that used to hang from your house before the campaign. You pick up the shard, hold it in your palm, and watch it melt. The water runs down your glove, cold and pure. Behind you, the camp begins to stir. Fires are being coaxed back to life, smoke rising in thin trails. The smell of burning pine fills the air, heavy but comforting. You listen to the low murmur of men waking, the soft clatter of armour, the rhythmic scrape of someone sharpening a blade. Ordinary sounds, but together they build a strange kind of peace. Routine has become the only warmth that doesn't fade. You sit by the fire and warm your hands. The wood hisses as the frost burns off, and for a moment you can almost imagine it's rain, not snow, falling outside. One of the younger soldiers sits beside you, his face pale and chapped. He stares into the flames for a long time before saying quietly, "I dreamed of home last night. The trees were blooming." You nod. You don't tell him that you dreamed the same thing. You don't have to. The cherry blossoms come to everyone sooner or later. In dreams. In memory. In the spaces between waking and sleep. They're the one thing that belongs to every man here. A promise of something softer, something worth enduring for. No one talks about it openly. It's too fragile a thing for words. But sometimes, when the fire burns low and the snow falls without sound, you can feel it in the air, that collective longing for colour, for warmth, for the season that means life still exists somewhere. The officer passes by, his breath steaming in the cold. He stops near the fire, watching the flames for a moment. His armour is immaculate, his face unreadable, but his eyes look far away. You wonder if even he dreams of blossoms. If behind all that discipline and duty there's a part of him that still remembers the scent of spring rain on temple stone. He says nothing, just nods once and walks on. As the day wears on, the snow begins to melt in patches under the weak sun. Water drips from the edges of the tents, leaving dark lines on the white ground. It's not much, but it's enough to change the sound of the air. Less static, more alive. You listen to the slow rhythm of melting, the soft patter against canvas. It feels like the earth itself is breathing again after holding it in for too long. You help gather water from the edge of the river, filling buckets chipped with ice. The water is so cold it burns your fingers. You carry it back to camp carefully, trying not to spill. When you set it down by the fire, steam rises as it touches the hot stones. You watch the vapour curl upward, twisting and fading like petals caught in wind. You blink, and for a moment you could swear the smoke looks pink, just for an instant, before it disappears. Lunch is simple: rice, thin broth, a sliver of fish shared between 4 men. You eat slowly, not because it's good, but because it's something warm to hold. Someone hums a song under his breath, an old one about spring returning after a long winter. You recognize it. Your mother used to sing it when you were a child, back when seasons still meant something. You find yourself humming along without realizing. The afternoon light fades quickly, turning gold for a brief moment before grey swallows it again. You walk the perimeter of camp, boots crunching on wet snow. The air smells different now. Damp earth under the frost, the faint scent of smoke mixed with thawing pine. You look toward the distant hills and imagine what they must look like in another season. Green slopes, blossoms falling like snow, but soft, silent, alive. You think about the festivals back home, the lanterns, the laughter, the cups of sake passed around under blooming trees. You remember standing with friends beneath a canopy of pink, petals sticking to your hair, drifting into the river. You remember how the wind carried them, how they floated away without sound or struggle. You used to think that was beautiful. Now you think it looks like surrender. As night falls, the temperature drops again. The snow starts lightly, barely visible against the dark. The fires burn lower, and the camp grows quiet. You sit near the edge, watching the horizon fade into nothing. The sky is clear enough that you can see a few stars. Their light faint but steady. For the first time in weeks, you can smell something clean in the air. Cold? Yes, but not sharp. Just quiet. You lie back on the straw mat, still in your armour, your hands folded over your chest. You close your eyes and try to find sleep. It doesn't come right away. Your thoughts drift instead, unspooling slowly, moving from the sound of the wind to the memory of blossoms falling. You imagine standing beneath a tree again, your sword laid beside you, the world soft and bright. The petals touch your face, melt against your skin, disappear. You reach for one, but it slips away. You reach again, and it slips again. That's how the dream always goes. When you finally drift off, the dream deepens. You see your home, not as it was, but as it should be. The walls whole, the garden quiet, the air filled with the sound of water and wind. You walk barefoot across the wooden porch. The boards are warm beneath your feet. You kneel by the riverbank and see your reflection in the surface. Not the face you have now, worn and pale, but the one you remember, the one from before the war. You almost don't recognize it. Someone in the dream calls your name. The voice is soft, familiar. You turn, but no one's there. Just the wind moving through branches heavy with flowers. You breathe in deeply. The air tastes sweet. You sit there, waiting, because it feels like the kind of dream that's meant to end before you're ready. Then the sound changes. A low rumble, distant at first, then closer. The wind grows colder. You look up and see the petals lifting, spinning faster, turning white as they rise. You blink, and they're snowflakes again. The warmth fades, the world tilts back to what it is. You wake suddenly, breath visible in the darkness. The candle beside you is burned out. The air smells like smoke again, not flowers. You stay still, listening. The camp is quiet except for the occasional cough and the crackle of a dying fire. You realise your hands are clenched, as if you were holding something. You open them slowly, half expecting to see a petal, though of course there's nothing. You pull the blanket over your shoulders and stare at the ceiling. The dream lingers longer than it should. You can still see the pink of the blossoms when you close your eyes. Still feel the warmth of sunlight that doesn't exist here. It's strange how the mind can remember warmth, even when the body has forgotten it. You lie there, breathing slowly, the ghost of spring still in your head. You know the snow will fall again tomorrow, and the fires will smoke, and the cold will press against every inch of you. But for now, you let the dream stay. You think about how every man here must have his own version of the same vision, his own memory of sunlight, of laughter, of colour. Maybe that's why they endure. Not for the orders, not for the banners, but for the hope that somewhere, beyond all this white, the blossoms will bloom again. The wind picks up outside, shaking the walls of the tent. You pull the blanket tighter and close your eyes once more. You see petals falling again, slow this time, carried on a warm breeze that feels like forgiveness. You hold the image as long as you can, knowing it will fade by morning, but grateful that it came at all, and somewhere between waking and sleep, with the smell of smoke still clinging to your clothes and the cold pressing gently against your face, you almost believe that you can feel the warmth again, faint, fragile, and far away, but real enough to keep you alive one more night. When the order finally comes to move, no one cheers. There's no talk of victory or glory, no speeches, no drums. Just the quiet rustle of tents being taken down and the slow sound of footsteps in snow. You've been waiting for weeks to hear those words, that the campaign is over, that it's time to return home. But when they finally reach your ears, they don't feel like salvation. They sound like another test. The march begins before sunrise. The sky is a dull, colourless grey, the kind that never promises warmth. The snow has hardened overnight, crusted with ice, so every step breaks it with a crunch that echoes endlessly. You fall into rhythm, one step after another, your breath visible in the air, your body moving more out of memory than strength. The men around you move the same way, heads bowed, shoulders hunched, faces hidden behind scarves. The sound of the march is all there is. The thud of boots, the creak of armour, the slow, steady exhale of men who've forgotten what comfort feels like. The horses struggle. Their hooves slip on the ice, and their breath rises in thick clouds. The handlers speak softly to them, urging them forward, but the words are mostly for themselves. The animals are as exhausted as the men. Their hides are dull, their eyes glazed. They've carried too much for too long. The officers ride ahead, their armour dark with frost. They don't look back. They know what the march will cost. Retreat is always more dangerous than advance. The body weaker, the mind slower, the roads buried and treacherous. You tighten the straps on your pack and keep moving. The cold gnaws at your fingers through the gloves. Your feet feel numb, heavy, detached from the rest of you. The landscape doesn't change. White hills stretch endlessly, dotted with bare trees that look like bones. The wind blows steadily against your face, carrying small particles of ice that sting your skin. You squint into it, eyes watering, and remind yourself to keep your head down. It's easier that way. You stop looking for landmarks. You stop looking for anything. The pace slows as the day wears on. Men begin to stumble more often. One slips on the ice and doesn't get up right away. Two others help him to his feet, but he falls again a few minutes later. The commander orders the column to keep moving. No one argues. There's no cruelty in it, just calculation. To stop for one man means freezing for 10. You've seen it before. On other marches, other winters. Survival turns men quiet. It makes them efficient in ways that used to seem unthinkable. There's no room for honour here. There's only distance, and the need to cross it before the cold decides otherwise. By midday, the wind changes direction, carrying the smell of smoke. You look up and see dark shapes in the distance. Burned out villages, roofs collapsed under snow. You pass through one of them, your boots sinking into the ash mixed with ice. The houses are empty, the doors torn from their hinges. You glance inside one and see a half-buried hearth, the remains of a meal still frozen on the floor. You wonder who lived here, how long ago they left, whether they survived the same winter you're still trapped in. The men take what they can, a few bundles of wood, scraps of cloth, anything that burns. You help carry a beam from one of the ruined houses to use for firewood later. It smells faintly of smoke and pine. The weight feels familiar, almost comforting. Carrying something means you're still useful. You stop briefly at a frozen stream to drink. The water tastes like metal and dirt, but it's wet, and that's all that matters. You dip your hands in and splash your face. The shock of it wakes you for a moment. You see your reflection rippling in the thin layer of meltwater, a face drawn and hollow, beard stiff with frost, eyes sunk deep into their sockets. You look older than you should. Everyone does. The column moves again. The sun, if it can be called that, hovers low in the sky, giving no warmth. The shadows stretch long across the snow. You start to lose track of time. Minutes blur into hours, hours into the slow rhythm of breath and footsteps. You think about food, not because you're hungry, but because hunger is something you can measure. You think about rice, about the smell of miso, about tea poured from a steaming kettle. The thoughts make the cold worse, but you hold on to them anyway. By evening, the camp is set up in a narrow valley sheltered from the wind. Fires are lit, small and scattered. The smoke hangs low, trapped by the air. You sit near one, holding your hands close to the flame. Your fingers barely feel the heat. Someone passes around a pot of thin rice gruel. You take your share, drink it slowly, and feel it settle in your stomach like a stone. Across the fire, two men talk quietly about home. One says he's from Kai province, near the mountains. He says the snow there is softer, gentler somehow, not like this. The other nods and says nothing. You don't ask where either of them plan to go when the march ends. You don't ask yourself that either. Home feels like an idea more than a place now. When you lie down that night, your body aches in ways you can't describe. The muscles burn, the joints throb. The skin feels stretched too thin. You curl up under the blanket and listen to the wind scraping through the valley. It sounds like whispers, like words you almost recognize. You close your eyes and try not to think of anything at all. You wake before dawn, sore and stiff. The fire beside you has burned out, leaving only a pile of ash. The air smells faintly of smoke and wet cloth. You pack your things in silence, moving through the motions without thought. The man who was coughing all night doesn't get up. Someone covers him with a cloak. No one says a word. The march continues. The next few days blend together. Snow, wind, hunger, silence. The column grows smaller. Some men fall behind and never return. Others keep walking long after their faces go grey, driven by something that's no longer duty but instinct. You stop trying to count the dead. The only numbers that matter now are steps, one after another, until the ground changes colour. On the fifth day, you pass through another village. This one's still standing. Smoke rises from the chimneys, thin and cautious. The people who live there stand at a distance, watching the army pass. Their faces are expressionless, their eyes wary. You see a child holding his mother's hand, both wrapped in the same blanket. He stares at you until the column moves on. You think about what you must look like to him. Armoured, filthy, half-frozen, more ghost than man. You wonder if he'll remember it years from now, if he'll tell stories about the winter when soldiers came out of the snow and disappeared again. That night, you find a quiet spot by the fire and take off your boots. Your feet are white, the skin cracked, the nails dark. You rub them with snow to wake them, biting your lip as the pain floods back. It's proof you're still alive. You wrap them again and lie back, staring at the smoke curling into the dark. The talk around the fire is different now. No one speaks of battle or honour. They speak of food, of family, of warmth. One man says his wife plants plum trees every spring. Another says he wants to see the ocean again. The words sound strange in the frozen air, but no one laughs. They just listen, as if saying those things aloud might bring them closer. You think about what honour means when survival becomes the only law. The codes you memorised as a boy, loyalty, duty, courage, they all make sense in the light of ceremony, in halls and gardens where death is an idea. Out here, where death is a constant companion, the words shift. Honour becomes endurance. Loyalty becomes persistence. Courage becomes the refusal to stop walking, even when every part of you wants to lie down and disappear under the snow. The officers don't speak of it, but you can see it in their faces too. The proud posture is gone, replaced by something quieter. The war is ending, or maybe it already has, but survival doesn't care about victories. It cares about breath, warmth, and the will to keep both. When the snow finally begins to thin, the ground beneath is dark and soft. Mud replaces ice, and each step becomes heavier. The wind loses some of its bite. You can smell the earth again, faint but unmistakable. It doesn't smell like smoke or rot. It smells alive. You stop for a moment, crouch down, and touch it with your bare hand. It's wet and cold, but it feels like the first honest thing you've touched in months. You look up and see the valley stretching ahead, the snow receding into distant peaks. The path curves downward toward villages you've only heard about. Somewhere beyond them lies home, or what's left of it. You start walking again, slower now, not because you're tired, but because each step feels heavier with meaning. The cold still bites, the hunger still gnaws, but underneath it all, there's something else. The faint, stubborn pulse of survival. As night falls, you make camp one last time on the road. The fire burns brighter than it has in weeks, fed by wood that's finally dry. You sit close to it, eyes half closed, feeling the warmth reach your face. The men around you speak quietly, the voices soft with exhaustion. Someone laughs once, not loud, but real. You look at the flames and think about how strange it is that life keeps finding ways to continue. You close your eyes and listen to the crackle of fire, the slow breathing of those around you. You think about all the men who didn't make it this far. You think about how the world will never know their names, how their bones will rest beneath the snow, their stories carried only by memory. You think about your own name, how little it matters, and how much you still want to hear it spoken in a warm room somewhere far from here. When you open your eyes, the firelight dances on your armour. It looks almost gold in the dark. You take a slow breath let it out, and feel the weight in your chest lighten just enough. Tomorrow you'll keep walking. Tomorrow you'll find out what's left of home. For now, you sit in the glow of the fire, the cold still waiting at the edges, and breathe. The war feels far behind, the snow already turning to water. The march continues, not for honour, not for victory, but simply because you're still alive to make it. And in this quiet, endless winter, that's enough.